I'd like to call this meeting of the Wallingford Planning and Zoning Commission, our Monday, April 13th meeting. Everyone could please rise for this pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, I'd like to apologize for the tight quarters. It's during April is budget season, so the second floor council chambers is being used by the council. So appreciate everyone's patience while we work in this crowded room tonight. I'd like to do introductions of the commission members and staff who will be participating in tonight's meeting. Beginning at my far left, we have Cheryl DeGenova. Seated next to Cheryl is Jim Seichter. To Jim's right and my immediate left is J.P. Benoit. At the far end of the table, we have the Assistant Town Planner, Amy Torrey. Just taking her seat is our Recording Secretary, Cheryl Ann Tubby. Seated next to Cheryl Ann is the Town Planner, Kevin Virginie. Seated next to Kevin is Dave Leonardo, the Commission Secretary. To my immediate right is Jeff Cohen, the Vice Chair, and my name is Jim Fitzsimmons, Chairman of the Commission. Our first order of business is consideration of the minutes of the March 9th, 2026 meeting. Did any Commission members have any questions, comments, or revisions or corrections? If not, a motion would be in order.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from our regular meeting on Monday, March 9th, 2026 as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Voted beginning with Dave?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And yes. Looking to our agenda, I just want to share, I know where people have just arrived. We have 4 public hearing matters. The first is a special permit continuation of the adaptive reuse to multifamily for Mount Chiotti at 386 Williams Road. Then we have a text amendment, and then we have 2 others noticed. One is a special permit for multifamily housing, Mackinvale. That application has been withdrawn. And number 4, the re-subdivision for KSCGH Partners, 110 Legas Road. They've requested no action, and that'll be continued to the May 11th meeting. So if you're here for any of those that are withdrawn, I just want to make sure to make that clear at the beginning of the meeting. We will start with our first public hearing of the night, which is a continuation of the special permit application for adaptive reuse to multifamily. I'll ask the applicant and the representatives to come to the main table. And I want to ask the secretary to acknowledge any new correspondence from our last meeting.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a number of new correspondence. There's a memo from Kevin Virginie, Town Planner, to Mike Hughes, Chief Sanitarian Officer, dated March 23rd, 2026. There's a Wallingford Fire Department inspection report dated for April 2nd, 2026. There's a letter from Jonathan Galika regarding the proposed special permit. There's a number of correspondence regarding some estimated ages with documentation of the barn and the buildings on the property, as well as photographs. There's also a letter dated April 7, 2026 from Maria Williams, 3 North Drive. As well as more photographs of the surrounding area. There's a memo dated April 8th, 2026 from the Department of Engineering. There's a unsigned letter received April 10th, 2026 regarding the application, as well as a new correspondence that I believe came in today from Mr. Malchody in rebuttal of the letter received on April 10th, 2026.
Thank you very much. Could introduce yourself and address the commission.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Bob Wiedenman from Sunwood Development Corp. Here in Wallingford. I'm here representing the owners of the property, Mike and Mark Malchotti. Before I get started, I think we're going to be all presenting from up here because this is the only microphone, so if they want to use these 4 chairs, I don't know that anybody else is going to be sitting on.
Yeah, maybe other people if
Anybody wants to
the
sit.
other applications.
If it's okay with you, I'd like to just start with a couple of revisions we've made since our last meeting, mostly from inputs from the commission and from the neighbors. I'd like to just explain a little bit about what we're doing, and then I'd like to go through a couple of the questions and comments that were raised at our last meeting, and I can address those and then open it up to any other questions anyone may have. The most significant change we've made is reducing the number of units in total from 9 to 7. That would be 2 in the existing house and 5 in the barn. Originally, we had 3 shown in the house and 7 in the barn. So we're going from 9 to 7. If they're a total of 8 bedrooms, so 6 of those units would be 1-bedroom units and 1 would be a 2-bedroom unit, which would be the existing first floor of the house. Just to kind of explain what we're thinking, we got a lot of feedback about the density and the intensiveness of our proposal. So recognizing that, we've discussed it internally and decided that it would make probably more sense to reduce the number of units. The house is going to stay exactly as it looks today with no changes other than just a small amount of additional parking placed out in front of the garage. And the barn, the configuration stays exactly the same. The number of units again gets reduced and the parking gets a little bit of an adjustment, so we have a little less impervious surface, which address some of the other concerns. The overall intensity is really equivalent to what you would have on this site if there were 2 single-family homes on this, 2 4-bedroom colonials. So when we think about the amount of water usage or the amount of sewage usage.
I can't hear you back there. Can you talk louder?
Next work.
Is this picking up, or I'll just try to speak a little more
That's just
loudly?
picking up for the video, it's not, there's no
Okay,
amplification.
I'll try to speak up, thanks for letting me know. So the intensity, in our opinion, is very similar to that of 2 single-family homes. 2 4-bedroom homes would have a septic system equivalent to what we're proposing. The 2 wells on the site would be very equivalent to what we'd have if we had 2 single-family homes on the site. Impervious surface, very similar to what we'd have intensity-wise for single-family homes. So I hope that addresses a lot of the concerns. Some of the specific concerns or questions that were raised at the last meeting, one was the age of the barn. And while we don't have an exact date, we have photographs that I believe we submitted to the commission prior to the meeting that show house construction and people working on the house that appear to be back in the 1930s, but we don't have an exact date. There's one photo that shows the barn in the background of the house being worked on. The new house, the house that's there now is not the original house. It was actually a house there prior to that I believe was taken down and replaced in the 50s. It was built by the assessor's records in 1955, and the barn is shown in the background prior to that. Another question that was raised was describing what's the primary use of the property versus a secondary or accessory use. In looking at your regulations, I could not find definitions for either a primary or secondary use, only an accessory use, which is basically a use that's customarily incidental or subordinate to the principal use of either the building or the property. But that was really the only definition that I could find in your regulations. I'm not sure that it's overly critical. It doesn't, in the regulation that we're trying to work under, the adaptive reuse provisions don't really call out the age of the building or the existing use, but I know that was a question that was raised. The next question that was raised was the gross floor area calculations, and it's a little bit of a complicated process, but basically there are 2 parts to it that are probably concerning for the commission. One is whether or not we have an existing building or buildings of at least 5,000 square feet. And we do in this case. We're about 6,500 square feet, whether we use the assessor's records or our own calculations and actual measurements. So that's the one trigger. You need at least a 5,000 square foot building to make it make sense. Well, I shouldn't say that, to allow you to use this regulation. Then once you have that, you're able to take the square footage of the building and you divide it by the number of units based on their bedroom count. So a one-bedroom unit would be dividing the square, if they were all one-bedroom units, let's keep it simple to start with. If they were all one-bedroom units, you would divide the total square footage by 600 square feet to come up with the maximum number of units that you could have. In this situation, we divide our or multiply our 6 units by 600, getting us 3,600, and then we have a 2-bedroom unit, which is multiplied by 900. So our total would be 4,500 square feet of building in order to allow that number of units. Once you have that number of units calculated, you can actually expand the building if you choose to accommodate that. We're not intending to do that. We're going to actually build within the existing structures with no additions whatsoever. So I believe we are in compliance. I think the town planner can confirm that he and I have gone over this at length, because it's a bit of a complicated process, just to make sure that we're all on the same page and our calculations were correct. Again, based on the 9 units, we believe we were in compliance at that point in time, and obviously with only 7 units, we're even more in compliance, I guess you could call it. A couple of questions that were raised by commissioners. Mr. Seichter asked about the, just some housekeeping, I guess, signed off checklist with the application, which has since been submitted. I think the initial one, maybe it wasn't complete, it was filled out but not signed, I believe, and now we have one that's completed in the file. Another question that was raised was alternative uses, and in looking through your regulations, we came up with a whole series of things that can be done. As you know, our RU residential zones allow all sorts of different things, primarily residential, but there are also some accessory uses and other things such as farming and equipment, maintenance of equipment used on a farm, accessory dwelling units, community residence, and child care, education and religious uses, affordable housing, the adaptive reuse to multifamily that we're proposing here tonight, home occupations, boarding houses, nursery schools, child daycare centers, group daycare homes. Those are just some of the things. Some of those are special permits, some are as of right, some require site plan approval. So each of those that I just rambled off on have different requirements, but all of those types of things are allowable within the regulations. Lastly, and I quite honestly, I think this is probably going to be the most, the biggest decision you guys are going to have to make as a group is going to be the neighborhood character and whether we're in conformance with the general provisions. Currently, the mix of use in the area are primarily single-family homes. There are some multifamily houses in the neighborhood, along with a couple of houses with ADUs. So again, we think it's appropriate based on what other uses could be in place, so we think this is a good use of a property, in a particular barn building that is underutilized and has been for a long time. The next questions came from Commissioner Cohan. There were concerns regarding wells, the wells on our property and how it might impact adjacent wells, impact on the aquifer. We are in a watershed, water usage overall, and I think, again, the reduction in units is all to play into all those concerns. As I think we mentioned at the last meeting, the town water and sewer division has weighed in on it. They had no concerns with either septic system or aquifer or draining of the watershed or anything of that nature. So we feel that we've addressed all those concerns. And I think Mr. Cohan's other question was just, I guess what I was just saying is that we've addressed, by reducing the number of units, I think we've addressed a lot of those impacts and minimize them as best we could. Moving on to the neighborhood comments or neighbor comments and concerns, they were primarily focused on intensity of the development. Some people mentioned traffic, impervious surface, storm waters, septic system, well impacts in the watershed. Again, we feel that the intensity reduction plays into all those concerns, and we hope we've addressed that. I'm sure we're not going to satisfy everyone in that fact, but we're trying to be aware of the neighborhood concerns with that. There were a couple of comments from staff and other departments since the last meeting. The health department, there was a memo, I believe, on March 23rd talking about the septic system review. We have not gotten our state permit on that yet. The Department of Public Health would have to potentially weigh in on this, although right now we're trying to avoid that by going to 2 systems, 1 for each building rather than 1 combined system. And we may not have to do that. We're still working with the local health department on that. I would ask if you decided you wanted to act on this application tonight, we just make a contingent on that approval. Fire Marshal also sent in a memo dated April 2nd, providing no concerns or issues from his perspective. I had spoken to him at length just to make sure that we were on the same page with him as far as fire separation between the various units and how that is done without the need of fire sprinklers. And lastly, the town engineer, we have a memo from Allison on 4/8/26, and her only comment, in addition to the ones that she had in her previous memo, were to adjust the well location. She felt it was a little too close to the driveway and likely to be damaged by plowing of snow and that sort of thing. So we agree with that, and we'll make that revision. That just came in on the 8th, so I've not had the change made on the plan, but we're more than willing to do that as well. Lastly, I'd just like to tell you a little bit of why we think this is an appropriate use. We have a non-conforming machinery shed in the left top corner there in pink, and that's an old machinery shed that's close to the setback lines, and that will be removed as part of this proposal if we're fortunate enough to get our approval. So we eliminate some non-conformity there. There's also the elimination of some conflicting information regarding a house that has in the past been used as a 2-family house. Some question whether it's legally allowed. I think the tax department has it listed as a 2-family house. Planning and zoning department has it listed as a 1-family house. Should we get this approval, that kind of all goes away and we have a clean site that's properly permitted. It would eliminate the current use as a contractor storage yard or building, most of it's stored inside, and return the property to residential use, which in my opinion is more appropriate for this location than other uses that could have a higher intensity impact on the residential area surrounding us. We'll obviously improve the overall condition of both the barn and the house with new siding, new windows, more landscaping and maintenance. I should mention one other thing. It's not on the plan, but one of the comments from an abutting neighbor to the east, which would be the top of the plan, asked that some additional shrubbery be planted there to provide a buffer, and we're willing to do that as well. We just haven't had time to put it on the plan. And lastly, it's just going to provide much needed housing. We've talked long and hard about this at the commission level with various regulations over the last few years about the need for housing. We think this is one way to get a small amount of additional housing without a huge impact to the existing neighborhood, and we feel it's an appropriate way to solve this issue without having a major impact, in our opinion, of course. With that, I think I will stop talking and open up to questions if the commission has any, or with your permission, the neighbors.
Thanks, Bob. Take a seat. I'm not sure with the microphone situation, so as long as everyone enunciates.
They open the door and start yelling, I'll come back.
Everyone enunciates, we're fine. Let's start on my right. Any commission members have any comments or questions for the applicant?
I'm good.
Yeah, I'll start out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that. I think the couple of important things for me is I do appreciate the reduction in the number of units. I think that does decrease the stress on the water table and the septic system. I'd like to see it reduced further, maybe 5 would be more to my liking. You did mention the sanitarium and the water department. I do have, and you're absolutely right, you're waiting on some responses from the state. And, I think that the memo from Tom Flannery, he's the Water and Sewer Division. Basically, he points the finger at the chief sanitarian might use in fulfilling all the requirements for the septic and the water system. And there's certainly a number of issues with, doing the well, doing the septic system. And I don't know how long it takes for this to get through the state. Do you have any, and this was dated March 23rd. I don't know if there's been any further communication on the issues here or approvals?
Unfortunately, I don't have my engineer with me tonight, so I can't tell you specifically.
I spoke to the health department 2 days ago, and he said there has been no update from the state yet, so he's still waiting on their final approval on the septic.
Again, my opinion would be to, wait on this until, we get a definitive answer from, the state on, what can and cannot be done, and, get their blessing on this before we move forward. And I will state that, and I think this was stated in the first meeting that, for adaptive reuse, this is a good use, I think. But the regulations do state that, there should be something that is supplied by public water and sewer. And, again, we're making contingencies to use well and septic. And, this might be a good issue for our POCD to, we've said this before, map out where our needs are for public, water and sanitary sewers. So just to sum that up, I do like the reduction. I'd like to see it reduced a little further. And, I read into the regulations as far as landlords and, the impact of the residents if you do run out of water. I mean, there's a lot of financial issues with that. And I don't know if that's something that we could, regulate, have a condition of approval. But, financially, if you run out of water, there's a lot of expense for the landlord. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for going first, Jeff. Just wanted to collect my thoughts on some of these things. So, I agree with a lot of the things Commissioner Cohen said regarding, the state and all those things with the sewer and the wells. But I also have a difficult time with this application in that I cannot find another use this large of a multifamily type of use in this area. I know we've only had a few of these adaptive uses since they've been put in place, so that plays into that a little bit. But I just don't see how this fits the character of the area of that part of town. And that's something that I'm having a difficult time, and I didn't really talk a lot at the last meeting because I was really wanting to see what you came back with. I agree the reduction is better. The work looks good, but again, when you look and you say these two big buildings, comparing that to a multi-family house down the road, a two-family or maybe a three-family, it just doesn't fit for me. And so along with these other things that we're kind of waiting for, the character, it's hard to sit here and talk about that as like a going forward. But it's definitely better than last time, but I'm just still having a difficult time with that. So.
Thank you. To my left?
Thank you. As far as the comments that Mr. Cohen made, I certainly can't add on those. I think he's very much spot on with that. Also, in fact, like him and I think other commission members, we appreciate the reduction that you made from the 9 to 7. But as I mentioned in the first meeting, what I have an issue with is kind of really the character of the neighborhood and how this blends in with the character of the neighborhood. I understand that there's other uses that this could be, but Looking at where the barn is situated, it's 6 feet and 1 inch, I think, off of the, I'm not sure if it's the north boundary of where the barn is. And while there is, in the, I guess in the surrounding area, there's a, I think a multi-family property get my directions mixed up. I think it's to the south. But that's set back more, it's set back from the road. It's more in the middle of that property, at least as I see it. Where I'm looking at this, and again, it's 6 feet, 1 inch off of the property line of, of one of the neighbors. And at least in my mind, to turn that into a residential property, and I fully appreciate and certainly support, increased housing in the town. There's certainly a need for it, but I think it's also important, that we look at various neighborhoods where we're looking to put the housing, and in fact, if that fits into the neighborhood and into the character of the neighborhood, and it's for that reason. Candidly, I have a very serious time in supporting the application, at least at this point. Thank you.
If I could, we're going to go to the public. If I could have a show of hands of who would like to address the commission on this particular application. Just 2? Okay. You could stand where you are, or come close to the microphone. It's entirely up to you. Just like the commission, we'll do our best to enunciate and speak loudly so everyone can understand each other.
Yeah, my name is
Please state your name and address.
Robert Restivo. I live at 390 Williams Road, which is the property that's to the left of that house with barn area that we were talking about earlier. I don't feel it's an appropriate use for the amount of rents and the amount of people that are going to infiltrate that area. It's one thing to have 3 or 4, maybe up to 5 people, and you're adding 3, 4, 5 cars, but now if you're talking that much more, you're adding to the traffic, you're adding to the noise. I'm sure these people aren't all going to work the same shift. So, you're going to be hearing this all the time. It's disturbing as it is. I'm more worried too about the well situation. You're going to dig another well, there's that much more water usage. And what recourse do we have if our wells run dry? Now, we can't do anything. You can't do much without water. So, it's very disruptive. And what happens if that happens in the middle of the winter? Is somebody going to come out and drill you a new well in the winter? And who's going to pay for that? So I'm sure the neighbors and myself have that same concern. But I read earlier today, also that the purpose of a town having a zoning board is not only to protect the property and the way it was originally laid out, but also, that's right, I have some bad quote, is to support what the existing neighborhood is. It's a single family use type of neighborhood. And it just seems to me that you're going to take half the people that live on Malchody now in single family, and you're going to cram all that many people and cars into one space next door to myself. I just don't think it's an appropriate use for it. And I think also that the zoning commission mentions in the very first paragraph that the part of that job is to protect not only the land but the people in the area from being overcrowded and overly, overused, let's say, for what its original purpose was. That's it.
All right, thank you very much. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Jim Bongiorno, 389 Williams Road, and chairman and members of the commission. My concern is with this specific parcel and its specific setting. Can it safely support development being proposed without creating permanent public health and safety problems? While the applicant suggests that this proposal qualifies as affordable housing under the state law, qualifications under 830 does not override or excuse compliance with non-waivable public health, watershed, and health code requirements. Importantly, the proposed development is located about 800 feet from Muddy River, which flows into a public reservoir. Any septic failure or excessive water loading would not remain isolated and directly threaten downstream public water supply. These are permanent public health risks and cannot be mitigated or waived through zoning relief. The barn sits on a substandard parcel located entirely with a designated watershed. The health code requires adequate land use for a septic system, a reserved area for future repairs, and a public well separation. In my understanding, that several perk tests were failed to provide suitable results for a septic system and a reserved area. I respectfully request the board review all perk test results. Importantly, the remaining undeveloped portion of this farm and the surrounding barn is now R120, and it is used specifically for environmentally sensitive areas, including watershed lands where wells, septic systems, and groundwater must be protected. The zoning of 120 confirms that the town has already determined that this entire area must remain in extremely low density for public health reason. The town itself reinforced this by purchasing approximately 50 acres nearby to control development and protect water resources. A residential occupancy of 10 to 19 individuals would consume approximately 4,620 gallons to 10,640 gallons of water per week, all supplied by private wells discharged into a septic system on a substandard watershed parcel. Weekly groundwater extraction and septic discharge here may exceed what this sensitive environment can sustain long term. Eventually, it will echo, Houston, we have a problem. About 200 feet north of this site, a modest hill and road curve. Combined with the mature trees on neighboring property, the driveway is virtually hidden and visibly and is severely restricted. Vehicles traveling southbound and those leaving the site cannot do so safely. Suspect that the driveway would fail all safety standards. The road has a solid yellow line because sight distance is restricted. It is estimated that vehicles traveling at 40 miles an hour require a total stopping distance to perceive and react of 147 feet, plus another 158 feet once brakes have been applied. With up to 38 trips, with coming and going of 19 residents, this traffic could endanger children waiting for school buses and residents retrieving mail at roadside mailboxes. Finally, the barn's long history as equipment storage raises concerns about soil contamination from fuel oils and agricultural chemicals, risks that cannot be mitigated on a parcel this size. For these reasons, the Commission has clear defensible ground to deny this application based on substantial public health, watershed protection, and traffic safety concerns. They cannot be mitigated. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any other member of the public wish to address the Commission? Gentleman in the back. Scott, you'll be after him.
Good evening. My name is Richard Partizano from 303 Highland Avenue. I'm just going to be brief. I'm going a little bit against the grain here of what people are advocating for. Okay, I'm an affordable housing advocate. You may remember the last workshop we had a month ago or so. It was a case of, there's a straw poll taken. Yes, affordable housing is good. Okay. You need to increase your housing stock, especially on the affordable housing side. Is it pretty, does it fit in perfectly in all cases? No. okay? But I'm just saying, take that into consideration as part of the whole picture of, what we're looking at here. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a couple technical questions through you, Mr. Chairman, if I could ask the staff.
Name and address.
Oh, yeah, Scott Moore, 13 Jenner Road. I've been through a couple of these, I should know.
You know the drill.
May I ask, so why is this a special permit application as opposed to a site plan approval?
It's an adaptive reuse to multifamily.
And when the regulations are changed in the future, will that change this process, or will it still be a special permit in the future?
It'll still be a special permit.
So all adaptive reuses from there will be,
Yeah,
okay.
well, in this zone, yes. Yeah.
All right. And another question, quick question I have is there a lot coverage issue with this, or is, because the footprint's not changing, everything is fine?
No, we only have building coverage, so there's no,
Okay.
they're not changing the building footprints.
So also with Mr. Partisano, I'm part of Wallingford Works for Housing, and we're sort of advocating for more affordable housing in town. We realize that there's a housing crisis all over the country. It's hitting especially acutely here in Connecticut. And we don't necessarily want to just put anything anywhere we can, but our goal is to be able to look at things as a community. So I understand the concerns of the residents having this kind of density in their neighborhood when they're used to having an empty building that's been there for 100 years. What I invite you to do is just take a look at the actual layout of the plan, because it doesn't look very different than many of the houses that are already there. I just walked in and realized that 2 units have been eliminated from the plan, so I think we're moving in the right direction. Some of the residents actually mentioned 5 units might be acceptable, so that might be something that we can look at in the future. I can't speak for Mr. Wiedemann if that's going to work out financially. On that sense, I invite all of you to come join the Wallingford Works for Housing, because we're looking at this as a community to try to figure out where we can do these type of things without having it be an adversarial conversation. We definitely want to be able to have more affordable housing in town. We want to use the existing regulations as well as the new law to make it in the sense that we're all choosing to do this together. And I hope that this gets approved for the sake of getting the ball rolling. The chairman has said many times that there's been many approved affordable housing applications that have not been built for either finances or some other reasons. So I'm hoping now that we come into hopefully a more readily adaptable regulation scheme and a cost for the developer that goes down because of this, that we won't have to spend a lot of time arguing about water and all that stuff. My thing is that if the engineering works out, it should be approved. There's very little traffic up there. 5 more, 7 more, dwelling units is not going to significantly increase the traffic. There's enough traffic that cuts through from there, from 68 over to go towards Northford anyway. So I'm thinking this might be a great use for this existing property that is now dormant. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go to the next speaker, you'll be next. I just want to clarify, this application is not for affordable housing. It's a traditional special permit, but it is an adaptive reuse. So the applicant is not applied under the state affordable housing reg. It's traditional housing. It's different because it's adaptive reuse to multifamily.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maria Williams. I reside at 3 Melchody Drive. I am right in on the borderline of 386 Williams Road. So I am downhill from their property. And first I want to say that's a great idea. I have nothing against the improving the building and everything. It looks great. But my concern is that because I am downhill from them, and if you look at the map, the plans, the leach fields and septic system is in the backyard against my yard, and it's only a few feet away from my property. And my well is in the backyard, which all the waste will be running downhill into my water, my drinkable water, and polluting my water. That is why I am not very pleased about this. I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the public wish to address the commission regarding this particular application? Seeing none, I'll offer you a chance if you'd like to comment.
Yes, I would, thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you don't mind, I'm going to go up to the plan first, because I want to address the last neighbor's comments, if I could. The sheet I flipped to is the septic plan for the proposal. The current septic for the house is up in this general location here. There's a large maple tree in the middle of the site. Our proposal is to put the septic system or systems, depending if there's one for each building or not, right down this lower area right here. If you notice the contour line, this goes from a high point up near Williams Road and goes diagonally across the lot, so this would be the low point off the site here. Ms. Williams' property is right here. Her well is located about, I think it's 40 or 50 feet off the property line in this location. So it is not down gradient of our proposed septic system. But regardless of that, there are health code requirements that we must meet with distances from septics to water, to existing wells or proposed wells or anything like that. The soils are actually extremely good. I'm gonna have to contradict another neighbor who said that there were problems with soils. These are actually outstanding soils here for septic systems, as good as you can find anywhere in the state. An inch in 10, an inch in 20, those kinds of test results, which are about as low as they go. Actually, to get much lower, you have to do other things because the water flows too quickly through them. So I just wanted to address her concerns, and I do appreciate that concern. I can understand why someone that's maybe not familiar with all the technical aspects of it might have that concern, but I can assure you that this flow is away from her, and the distance separation would allow plenty of infiltration. You can see the distance from these wells, and obviously wells, it's not just where the well is sitting on the ground, but also the fact that it's 150 to 300 feet in the ground below it. But there is infiltration going on between the exit of a septic system into the water table. So I just wanted to address that first off. To start back at the beginning, Commissioner Cohan asked about the 7 versus 5, and clearly it's an economic decision. As you folks know, I've been before you a lot of times. One of the things that I kind of pride myself in is trying to show the town, but also my fellow builders across the state, that we can do small projects and have an impact on the housing affordability and just a lack of housing. And I do that in a way that I can show guys that we don't have to develop 100 and 200 acre subdivisions, taking up valuable farmland, that we can infill small sites and make it economically feasible. That's great on paper. The reality is, when you take 2 units away from someone that's building 100 units, it's 2%. You can usually make the numbers work, and that happens quite frequently. When you take 2 units away from a 7-unit project, can't do the math, but it's a lot. It's a significant impact on the financial viability of a project. So I just want to point that out. It's not that, I don't want to say, no, I won't do it, and I'm just being argumentative about it, but there is a financial reality, I guess, that comes about trying to do that. Regarding your concerns with the state approval for the septic system, as I mentioned, because we're trying to maybe split this into 2 systems, that would be approved just at the local level. It would not require state approval. But if we require state approval, it's probably no different than, as you guys know, when you go before when we get an approval on most things that have the DOT approval, DOT, Department of Transportation, will not even look at an application at the state level until you have your local approval. Basically, their feeling is, if you don't get your local approval, we're not going to waste our time looking at a project that may never get your local approval. That's not the case with DPH, Department of Public Health, or DEEP, Environmental Protection. But I would look at kind of in that same light that there's no reason not to make it, if you decided to vote on it tonight or whenever you decide to vote on it, to make it a contingency that obviously we get it. If we do not get our approval from the health department, whether it's local or state, our project doesn't go anywhere. So there's not a risk that you're going to approve something that somehow we're going to circumvent those other approval requirements anyway. I want to talk a little bit about the water, the well water on the site. As I mentioned, we already have a single well servicing the house now, so what we're looking at is one additional well to service 5 units and 5 bedrooms. Not more in volume than you would have for a single-family home. The other thing with water today is our houses are built so much more efficiently from a water usage standpoint. If you take a house that was built 30 years ago, we'd be using twice as much water as we use today in our homes. It's been that much of a significant decrease in the amount of water. That impacts both the amount of water that we have to draw out of the ground, but also the amount of sewage disposal that we have to deal with going back in. And those requirements should be constantly adjusted by state regulation to address those things. So the fact that we're adding one additional well here really has an insignificant impact, in my opinion, on the overall water needs of the entire area. Regarding the question on setbacks, I can't move the building. I guess I could move the building if I really needed to. Nothing's impossible. The reality is that building's not ever going to get relocated, so it's either going to stay there in its current condition, it's going to stay there in some reuse to some other use, or it's just going to continue to deteriorate until eventually it falls down and somebody bulldozes it. But our feeling is if the building is going to be there, isn't it more appropriate to have a use that is compatible with the neighborhood? And I think, again, residential is the most compatible use, and that is properly designed and built and maintained in a careful way. And I think we can address all those concerns. Last couple of comments. Mr. Chairman, you pointed out that this is not an affordable housing project under 830G. That is an option, but it's not one that we're proposing, and I would discourage that use. But that is always on the table, but I would prefer not to go in that direction. Sewer flow to the Muddy River, and I assume that was in reference to the septic system as well. We are nearly 800 feet from the Muddy River. There are literally 20 septic systems within a quarter-mile radius that are much closer to the river than we are. So for all those folks that think that we're going to pollute it, when are they going to take their houses down and go move them somewhere else away from the river? That'll never happen. But I mean, it's sort of a little disingenuous, in my opinion, to be concerned with my septic system when your very own is just as likely to pollute a reservoir downstream. There was also a comment about the zoning. This is an RU40 zone, not an RU120 zone. So I just want to clarify that on the record. We talked about the septic design. We already have 4-bedroom septic discharging onto the site now, so we're only adding an additional 4-bedroom septics quantity. I guess a couple things on traffic and sight lines. As you can see, there's a very straight section of road here. Williams Road is actually a collector street per our regulations, which means it does typically see a slightly higher volume of traffic than you would see on a local road, cul-de-sacs, or even, this is, I wouldn't say it's a high volume road, but it's certainly a direct flow up to 91 to the north or south, depending which direction you're driving. So it's not a low flow volume of traffic as it is. Sight lines are more than sufficient, and peak flows on a property like this with nine units, and actually with the potentially two units that are already there, we're only adding 7 additional trips per hour at the peak period. Insignificant, in my opinion, on the overall traffic that flows. I don't have a traffic study to tell you how many cars go on there, but I can assure you that nobody's going to notice an additional 7 cars driving here between 7 and 9 a.m. or between 4 and 5 p.m. in the evening. And I think I'll stop at that. I appreciate your time and happy to answer any other questions that may be outstanding that I haven't addressed.
Thank you very much. Kevin, you have any comments before I go back to the commission?
No, I just think the commission should really think about the precedent this would set, as Dave mentioned, and yeah, I think if there's any other technical information you would like, if you don't want to vote tonight, just request that, and I can do my best to try to answer those questions.
Was there one more public speaker? Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Let me bring it back to the commission. Any other questions or comments before we talk about next steps? Is there additional information needed? Or do we have enough?
Well, yeah, Mr. Chairman, as I mentioned in my earlier comments, I think the bulk of the outstanding questions about the well and the septic from, the state and the town really needs to be addressed before we, approve this. I am always hesitant a little bit to, make these conditions of approval because things get started and, if they get started and this, fails the test, then what do we do? I'd rather, get it right the first time, I think. So that, is the stumbling block for me. And a couple other additional commissioner questions about the neighborhood character I think is important. And, again, our regulations really state that for an adaptive reuse, the multifamily should be served by public sewer and public water. I really think that's, the main issue here. It not only affects, the residents who move into this place, but potentially the neighborhood as well. I don't know if any thoughts have been given into a hydrology report to see what the aquifer looks like. The way the rock, is in the ground, somebody could have plenty of water and the next person, could run up dry. I don't know if anybody's, can map that out in this area. So I think it's a tough decision.
Is the issue of, actually it's for you, do you have a timeline of when you expect a response from the state?
No, they work on their own timetable, to be quite honest, so I can't tell you when they're going to decide they're going to act on it. I would say just for protection of the town, permits would not be issued prior to all our approvals being done. We would not get a zoning permit, we would not get a building permit without those things being addressed. So the fear of us going out there and starting work prior to having all our other approvals would just not be practical to happen at all.
And then I guess my next question would be for the town planner. Based upon the application that was submitted and the start of the public hearing, what type of time frame do we have left available on the calendar? This is the second public hearing.
I believe he has 2 more extensions if he grants them for the commission, so.
Any further extension would require his approval?
Yes.
Or request. So a couple things. We could ask the applicant to extend and see if he receives a response from the state in advance of our May meeting. Or we could take action this evening based upon the information in front of us.
Well, I would suggest that we ask the applicant if he would like to extend. I'm not certain if the information that Mr. Cohen and I think other commission members are seeking is going to be received within that amount of time, but I think that would certainly give the applicant more time to see, in fact, if the state would respond to that. So I think that, in my mind, that would be the best approach, in all candor. I'm not sure that that's going to change my earlier comments that I made about the application, but I think that would be an approach.
Would you like me to respond?
You can respond.
Okay. I'm more than happy to grant an extension, in particular if we're able to move this septic system approval back to the local level. There's a potential that we could have it done prior to the next meeting, and for that reason, I'd be happy to grant an extension. The flip side of it is, I realize that this is really about the neighborhood compatibility. Regardless of whether we have a septic approval, if the majority of folks sitting up before me are going to vote in opposition of it, I would just as soon no tonight and move on to whatever our next plan might be. And that's just being totally honest, putting the cards on the table. And I understand you have a hard decision to make. So if we're going to end up in the same place a month from now, send me home with my tail between my legs tonight. I'll leave, but it's your call. Whichever you prefer to do is perfectly fine with me.
You'd be acceptable, you'd be agreeable if to grant an extension if that was the wishes of the
If the
majority.
commission felt like that might sway the decision, any individual or a collective decision,
Sure.
then I'd be happy to wait a month.
Okay. Then obviously back to us, gentlemen, lady. You want to wait or you want to take action?
Let's take action.
Yeah.
You're the first. Any objection to taking action?
None whatsoever.
Yeah, no objection.
All right. At this point, is anybody ready to close the public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing for application 401-26, special permit, adaptive reuse to multifamily, Melchody, 386 Williams Road.
Motion made to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed? And is anyone prepared to make a motion on the application?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to deny application 401-26, special permit adaptive reuse 386 Williams Road for the following reasons. Reason number one would be that in our zoning regulation handbook, section 6.16, item A, determination by the commission that the existing building and environments will be suitable for multifamily conversion and shall not adversely impact the existing neighborhood character. Additionally, section 6.16, item E, the existing building in addition shall be served by public sewer and public water supply. So we will not waive this condition. Additionally, we are waiting on substantial input as to how the well and the septic system will be configured by the state, which would serve to verify that this development could be constructed. And the items I would like to reference for that are memo 401-26-08, memo from Mike Hughes, Chief Sanitarian, to Kevin Pagini, Town Planner, and that's dated March 23rd. Bear with me for a second. The additional is the interoffice memorandum 401-26-06, dated March 4th, 2026, from Tom Flannery, Senior Engineer, Water and Sewer Division, to Kevin Pagini. And finally, memorandum 401-26-03, memorandum from Michael Hughes to Kevin Pagini, Chief Environmental Health Specialist, And one additional one is that we were still waiting on comments from the fire marshal, who did not do a review of the revisions.
Okay.
And if I say without prejudice, he can reapply.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, deny this without prejudice, so if you wanted to reapply, you could.
All right. Motions were made to deny. Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions on the motion? Vote beginning with Mr. Seichter.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes and the application is denied.
Thank you, everyone, for your consideration. Appreciate it.
Give a moment for the room to potentially clear a little before we go into our next application. I'll invite the next applicant to come to the center table, if you will.
I don't have to worry about it. Get it all set. Well, I do.
Yeah, well, the first one would be very
Get smart enough to talk to that
I just want to say thank you.
Next, item number 2 for public hearings is a text amendment. And I'll ask the secretary to read the legal notice and notice any information received from this applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Legal notice 502-26. Text amendment request for Quinnipiac Valley Growth Partners to add cannabis retailer as an allowed use in the RF40 Route 5 zoning district. Text amendment will alter sections 1.4, 6.34, and 4.16. There is correspondence as well. There's a letter dated March 16, 2026 from the South Central Regional Council of Governments to Town Planner Kevin Pagini, as well as a section 6.34 cannabis establishments as part of our zoning regulations. There's an email. Thank you. There's an email dated March 19, 2026 from Kevin Pagini to Sherry Murchison, from Allison Kuczynski, town engineer, regarding the text amendments. There's a fire department inspection report dated March 21st, 2026. There's also an email dated April 10th, 2026 from Commissioner Joe Sanders, excuse me. It's Joe, right? And that's it.
Thank you very much. If you could introduce yourselves to the commission and the mic, I think the microphones are for show. I mean, we have 2 in front of us, but there's no amplification in the room.
Well, why don't I introduce my team to begin with? We'll be presenting in a bit of a musical chairs fashion. I'm Jerry Farrell. I'm an attorney and a resident in Wallingford. I'm the president of Quinnipiac Valley Growth Partners. With me is Jim Weaver and Michael Pierpont, who are longstanding employees of the company. So, good evening to members of the commission. We've submitted a text amendment to you concerning allowing cannabis retailers in a small section of the Route 5 area. Quinnipiac Valley Growth Partners is a local company primarily owned and operated by Wallingford residents. Of the 4 people who will own this establishment, all 4 of them are Wallingford people. Quinnipiac entered a very competitive process to obtain what is known as a Section 149 cannabis cultivation license, conducted by the accounting firm of Cohn Resnick for the Connecticut Department of Consumer Protection. Our Section 149 license allows us to both cultivate, which we will do elsewhere, as well as retail, which we would like to do in Wallingford. When we started looking in Wallingford, because our owners are Wallingford people, we had some idea of where it might be proposed and where it would probably not work. And I'd like to have Jim Weaver walk you through a map which we have created showing the areas that we basically eliminated.
Thank you, Jerry. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Weaver. I'm from Quinnipiac Valley Growth Partners, and at this point there are around 70 dispensaries statewide, and nearly 60 municipalities have crafted zoning regulations relating to cannabis uses. Despite differences in terminology and procedure, these approaches broadly align and provide guidance for appropriately locating cannabis retailers in Wallingford. First, we eliminated all residential areas. Second, we eliminated Wallingford's downtown commercial district. Third, we eliminated areas within the industrial expansion districts, as Wallingford has traditionally not wanted retail in the IX zone. And in the last step, consistent with other towns, we have eliminated areas abutting residential zones, near public schools, or near places of worship. As you can see here, we prepared the zoning map with residential districts marked in red, areas near residential areas in yellow, IX areas in orange, and areas near public schools or places of worship within orange circles. As you can see, this leaves a very small stretch on Route 5 in the northern side of town and within the RF 40 district. As a primarily commercial area, serviced by major thoroughfare and located away from downtown or residential areas, the RF 40 district closely resembles those in which other towns permit cannabis retail sales. Cannabis retailers, especially in Connecticut, generally produce traffic and customer volume similar to others commercial retail uses, but substantially lower than comparably sized fast food, quick service food, or convenience stores. This stretch of Route 5, as currently existing, is more than adequate to support the operation of one or more cannabis retailers. We're now going to present a similar map to you. That this is a close-up detail of the area that we're referencing. That small strip, everything in white, that is the area that we have identified as for this, and the green is this a limited area within the RF40 district that we're proposing cannabis retail should be located in. So when we look for properties within the area on our map, and at least 892 North Colony Road, as marked on there. While I know our presentation should not focus on that specific property, we are trying to give the Commission as much context to work with in understanding how we arrived at where we are and why we are proposing what we are proposing. Unless the Commission has any questions on the proposed area or methodology, I will turn it back to Jerry Farrell to outline the non-geographic considerations.
Understanding that Wallingford has had a moratorium on cannabis for a number of years, the text amendment that we have proposed to you was written with certain thoughts in mind. That number one, we are not seeking to abolish the moratorium, but rather to amend it by allowing cannabis retailers, but continuing the prohibition on other kinds of cannabis businesses. Number two, we understand that Wallingford does not want to have a multiplicity of cannabis retailers. We have proposed an area that is small. The Commission can decide at a later date if it wanted to enlarge that area. The area that we have proposed to the commission would be large enough to include our facility and possibly a retailer to the north in the area of Stop and Shop and a retailer to the south in the area of ShopRite. Michael.
Good evening. My name is Michael Pierpont of Quinnipiac Valley Growth Partners. Each state that has medical cannabis and/or adult use cannabis programs runs independently, and the regulations in each state vary. The state of Connecticut has created one of the strictest cannabis licensing programs in the United States, starting with medical cannabis in 2012, as well as adding adult use cannabis in 2021. To get our license from the state, we entered a competitive application process. Once approved, our company was awarded the ability to purchase a license from the state for $3 million. Unlike all the illicit cannabis products which are sold throughout Connecticut, cannabis which is sold through a state licensee such as us is subject to mandatory testing to ensure that products containing elevated contaminants such as pesticides and heavy metals are not sold to a consumer. Cannabis products through state licensed retailers are also subject to a state-ordered recall in the rare event that a contaminated product was recognized after purchase. Unlike illicit cannabis sales, please understand that every single customer who walks into our business will have to present valid photo identification. They will not enter the store until such identification is produced and verified. State law also requires that we retain the information collected so that if a question arises about a purchase or a purchaser, that information is readily available to the Department of Consumer Protection. Our business is subject to federal, state, and municipal taxation. We will file a federal tax return and pay business taxes to the Internal Revenue Service. We will file sales tax returns and pay sales tax to the state of Connecticut. We will also pay the town of Wallingford a special municipal tax. We project that this special tax will bring approximately $200,000 in additional revenue to the town of Wallingford each year. And I'll let Jim Weaver walk you through what the state law and regulations will require of us.
Thank you, Michael. State law and DCP policy requires cannabis retailers to adopt operating procedures and meet specific security requirements significantly stricter than typical retail stores, pharmacies, liquor stores, or smoke shops. First, check-in and customer procedures limit access to only authorized people. All customers must check in at a reception desk to verify their age or medical registration prior to entering the sales area. Upon entering the sales area, customers proceed to one of several point-of-sale positions where staff will answer questions, take orders, or facilitate pre-order pickups. Once checked out, customers depart through a one-way exit. Second, extensive security systems provide live and recorded surveillance of all entrances, exits, and areas containing products. Automatic perimeter alarms cover all exterior entrances, exits, or windows, while interior security systems include easily accessible silent intruder alarms, motion-activated night alarms, and automatic emergency notification systems. Programmable card access and automatic locking mechanisms restrict interior access to only those authorized, properly registered, and possessing the appropriate credentials. No part of the sales floor or back-of-house area is visible to the public from the exterior. By contrast, all entrances, exits, and the entire sales area is easily visible to staff on the interior. Monitoring of secured areas, including product and cash storage, is continually provided by key employees, and security footage is immediately available to law enforcement or regulators. Finally, a robust battery backup system ensures security continuity in case of power loss. These security requirements apply to all cannabis retailers, regardless of location, and represent only one part of the overall comprehensive approach to health and safety. For discussion of the additional considerations, I'll turn it back over to Michael Pierpont.
Thanks, Jim. As Jim said, both the interior of our facility and the exterior will have cameras, which the Department of Consumer Protection can tap into at any time or view for a long period of time, if it wishes to review any transaction or the overall conduct of the business. This is the very high level of regulation which is involved. As a result, we will only be able to service a handful of customers at any one time. The plaza itself has 70 dedicated parking spaces. About 10 of those spaces are on the south side of the building within feet of our entrance. We will be installing cameras throughout the entire parking lot, as do many businesses do these days. By state law, no signage that we erect can display the cannabis leaf or anatomy. The text we have submitted to you further provides that no product in the store shall be visible through the store's windows. In addition, you should know that pursuant to state law and DCP policy, products cannot be publicly visible, no advertising can be placed on any door or window, and there's absolutely no on-site consumption allowed. A licensed pharmacist will be available on-site or via secure, private remote platforms during designated times to field patient or caregiver questions. Furthermore, products cannot be advertised or packaged in any way that could appeal to children or resemble established non-cannabis brands. Products arrive and are sold fully packaged in nondescript, child-resistant containers. We have spoken with all the other tenants in the plaza about our plans. All of the tenants were very hopeful that our store will increase retail patronage within the plaza. In addition to fixing up our own storefront, we have talked with the plaza owner about, at our expense, making facade improvements to the entire plaza so that it would look something like the Pancheros Plaza across the street. Our proposal also limits the hours of operation to no earlier than 9 a.m. and no later than 10 p.m.
So in regard to federal law concerning cannabis, a few things can be noted. There are 40 states that allow medical cannabis and 24 states that allow adult use cannabis. Furthermore, there are banks that are extending loans to cannabis companies. Quinnipiac Valley, for example, does business with a local bank that is FDIC insured, federally backed, and publicly traded on NASDAQ, the National Stock Exchange. Since 2015, federal law has recognized state law cannabis businesses and made them immune from federal law. President Trump's proposed budget for fiscal year 2027 continues those various protections under federal law for state licensed cannabis businesses. Additionally, in April 2024, the Federal Department of Justice, acting under President Joe Biden, started the process of reclassifying cannabis from a Schedule I drug to a Schedule III drug. For comparison, a Schedule III drug would be Tylenol with codeine. In December 2025, President Trump issued an executive order ordering the Federal Department of Justice to complete the reclassification to Schedule III. Executive orders by the President are considered to have the force of law and are considered presumptively lawful and in line with Article 2 of the United States Constitution. It's well known, I think one of the nicest things about Wallingford is that it has one of the highest age medians in the entire state. We have some wonderful older people, we have some wonderful elder care facilities. Wallingford is top-notch in that regard. And that's one of the reasons why Quinnipiac Valley's owners wanted to locate this business in their own community to make cannabis available, particularly to older residents who have to travel out of town. Wallingford's lack of a cannabis retailer was already noted by a national cannabis chain who has zoning approval to build a cannabis retailer on Route 5 in Meriden. In addition, I just read in the Record Journal that the Meriden Zoning Commission has recently received an application from Charter Oak Logistics, which has a cannabis transporter license. There are a number of these companies operating already through Connecticut, and I'd have to tell you, it's very likely they're operating already in Wallingford. So you are indirectly having cannabis retailers operating in Wallingford, just not in a bricks and mortar way. Wallingford, like many Connecticut towns, adopted its moratorium to preserve the status quo, to evaluate the impact of cannabis sales in other towns. Impacts to traffic, vehicular accident rates, cannabis misuse, underage consumption, product adulteration. None of those things have materialized in the intervening years. On the other hand, there are other Connecticut towns that have benefited from additional tax revenue, improvements to underutilized or unattractive real estate, and enhanced community access to beneficial products. So, in summation, we would like to bring a highly legitimate, highly regulated business to Wallingford, to help Wallingford residents, to bring Wallingford revenue, to eliminate the black market, and keep Wallingford dollars in Wallingford. And we'd be glad to answer some questions.
Thank you very much. Start to my right. Any?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So, was that map submitted with our packets here?
No, it's not.
Okay. I would have loved to have seen that here, so I could have, it's hard to see up there, but that's neither here nor there now. The other question I have, you keep saying moratorium, but is that, can I just ask Kevin a technical question here? Our regs say prohibition.
Yes, technically
So
prohibition.
Okay.
So a moratorium would generally expire. Some people use them interchangeably, but
Got
a
it.
moratorium
Okay.
should expire after
Okay.
a certain amount of time. So-
Okay, just a couple of technical things there. And then the other thing, we're kind of narrowing this down, and again, I wish I could have seen that map, on my screen here. But this feels like we're isolating this little tiny spot in town, right? For a very specific use. And I'm not sure how, I'm just gonna say it, I'm not sure how it's not spot zoning. Because it is an isolated spot in town. I think we're talking maybe 3,000 feet, right? Because you're saying 1,000 feet one way or the other, so maybe less than that, of town, where we're saying, oh, you can only do it right here. And you're saying possibly others can do it. But I'm not even sure that's even possible, given what I see
So right
here.
now, 892 is right at the center. As you
Mhm.
mentioned, there'll be a 1,000-foot buffer around that.
Sure.
So this property will be usable for future retailers, and the property to the north will also be. And I shouldn't say property as in one. This is a ShopRite Plaza, for the most part, would be utilizable if there were any vacancies, say, in the strip mall of that. And there would also be areas for somebody to go in up in the north.
So you just get under the 1,000 there, because
Yes,
the church?
I don't want to be quoted on it, but the 1,000 would probably go around something like that.
Yeah. So I think that the uncertainty about that, even you're saying it, you're a little uncertain about.
Oh, no, I'm dead certain that this is more than enough, that if you had one here, you could have a retailer
And
there.
does that take
you could have
into
a retailer
account,
there.
there's a school, and it's hard to tell, again, I wish I could have seen this beforehand, because there is an alternative school somewhere around that spot.
Yeah, Ben Haven.
So
Ben Haven. Yeah, thank you.
the amendment as proposed applies to Wallingford K through 12 public schools.
Okay.
And part of the reason for that is there are many things that call themselves a school. So, our text amendment gave you something that defines schools as a facility that's operated by the Wallingford Board of Education.
Sure.
Because you could have hairdressing schools, you could have karate schools. The list is somewhat endless, so we wanted to define what it would be.
So potentially could still be an organization with children around it in this facility sphere.
There could be an organization with children almost anywhere.
Sure.
I mean, one of the
Yeah.
reasons why we did not go up in the direction beyond Route 68 is you have a movie theater there.
Right.
And at the end of the day, we decided that that didn't work for us.
Yeah.
We're trying to operate a business that is frankly aimed at adults. It
Right.
is aimed at adults. So trying to be respectful of all those considerations, we came south.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I'm just kind of thinking of all the applications here, so.
We did have the question of spot zoning raised, I know, in conversations between Dennis Senaviva, who has represented us, and Kevin. And Dennis, who's enjoying a family vacation elsewhere this evening, did have a memorandum, if I can approach, give you a copy of it. So I know there had been this question of spot zoning. You know, Dennis walks you through, I don't know if you want me to read it into the record, but Dennis walks you through what spot zoning is, and, you know, I think reasonably argues that this is not spot zoning.
Okay, I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would support this. I think the time has come, other towns, as you mentioned, are in the business, have been in the business. Saw the same article you did about the transporter in Meriden. I do think there needs to be just a couple of tweaks as far as, you know, the regulation you've submitted, and we can get into that if you want. I think our Wallingford town engineer didn't want that specifically in there, and I think if you just said zoning enforcement or town map or town planner, that would be fine. I did have a question on item C, where it says valid cannabis retailer license or a hybrid cannabis. I think I know what that means, but could you explain that?
So it's a bit confusing, but you've probably heard the term dispensaries.
Yeah.
Connecticut doesn't use that term at all. So if it's for adult use, which in other states is called recreational, that's usually just called a cannabis retailer. If they also sell medical products, then it's a hybrid retailer. And so we just, that specificity is in there to align it with state law.
Okay, great. I do like the hours of operation. I think that some of the other neighboring towns, as far as distances, I think for schools, I think they had 1,500 feet instead of 1,000. I mean, that's not a showstopper for me, but I think other towns are a little farther away from, you know, the establishment. Do you have any idea what your, and I see your last item about signage, you're not gonna have any, you know, pictures?
No.
Any ideas what your signage might look like?
I mean, we're not really married to a brand at the moment, but we're very restricted in what we can do here in the state of Connecticut for cannabis retailers. Maybe you've seen other cannabis retailers or dispensaries in other states, but Connecticut in particular is very specific about no cannabis plant anatomy. That's a big one.
Yeah, right.
I think a lot of people have the idea of a big old cannabis leaf, you know, and a glowing green LED type of sign. We like this to be discreet and professional in every way. We're not married to, like I said, a name or specific branding at this time, but you know, we'll be sure that it appears properly.
Okay. And the last question, you know, I sit on the Regional Council of Governments, and we had our last meeting the other day, and a lot of towns are coming back to revise their text requirements, their text amendments for cannabis. And what they're doing is adding THC beverages, because that's the new thing, I guess. I don't know if you're considering that, or you know, because this regulation would not allow that. You know, they had specific verbiage, you know, to allow, you know, the beverages to be sold. So,
Sure, I mean, it's a common product in the cannabis. It's a form of a product that got popular multiple years ago. I guess while we're on the topic of cannabis beverages, I just want to point out that, you know, you may have actually seen these beverages in some cases in liquor stores at low amounts, and that's covered by, and it should be covered by the 2018 Farm Bill under a certain limit, right? And then if you go above that limit, you're still in the product of a cannabis beverage. It would have to be through a licensed retailer such as ourselves. So it could be, it is part of the market share of cannabis products, yeah.
And you may have them in Wallingford already that my package store clients will be mad at me, but you've probably already approved package stores that have THC beverages. It's allowed under Connecticut law for package stores.
right. So are you gonna sell this, or with this application?
I think as we've mentioned, those types of products are already available either at liquor stores, sometimes smoke shops, which I know every town's had a problem with. We're very limited as far as what types of products we can sell. It basically has to be a cannabis one produced in state. And I think the market share for those probably isn't big enough that, you know, if you wanted to insist that none of these retailers could sell THC beverages, I think that's something we can consider.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We left any comments, questions?
You got it. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, again, I appreciate you pointing out that this wasn't a moratorium. This was a regulation that the town put in place, so there wasn't any time limit placed on, you know, on our regulations. You know, from my standpoint, I don't have a strong opinion either way concerning the legalization of, you know, marijuana under, you know, state or cannabis under state or federal laws. You know, certainly, I guess I'd say in this, we have certainly a very politically charged climate that we live in right now. You know, and we hear from all sides, you know, depending upon an issue and how someone feels about an issue, that we're a nation of laws and we should adhere to those laws. You know, based upon at least the research I've done, and I didn't stay in a Holiday Inn Express, so I'm certainly not a lawyer, but, you know, marijuana, I think as Mr. Farrell indicated, you know, cannabis marijuana, it's currently classified as Schedule I under the Controlled Substance Act, which is basically the manufacture, distribution. It's illegal under federal law, and we all know that based on our regulations, you know, inapproved use needs to be valid or can't be illegal under local, state, or federal law. Again, as pointed out, you know, Trump in 2005, he executed an executive order directing the Attorney General to reschedule cannabis to Schedule III, which would result in the federal government recognizing the use of medical marijuana. You know, a Schedule I drug right now, a controlled substance, currently, you know, has no accepted medical use, you know, under the federal law. And based upon, at least, again, my research, again, the DOJ is yet to take any action on the executive order. But if it's removed to a Schedule III, the manufacture, distribution, you know, of recreational marijuana would still remain illegal under federal law. You know, and also, again, I could be wrong, but, you know, the Supreme Court has recognized states cannot actually legalize marijuana because states cannot change federal law, you know, due to the Constitution's supremacy clause. It dictates federal law takes precedence over conflicting state laws. And again, you know, Congress, again, is apparently granted some leeway to allow the distribution and use of medical marijuana under each of its budget cycles since, I think, it's fiscal year 2015. You know, Congress passed an appropriation right of barring the DOJ from using taxpayer funds to prevent states from impeding its own laws concerning medical marijuana. However, it doesn't remove criminal liability, but limits, the enforcement of the Controlled Substance Act under certain circumstances. So I think what we're here tonight, at least in my opinion, is to decide whether or not Wallingford should ignore federal law. I get it. Many cities and towns in Connecticut have legalized marijuana or cannabis under their zoning. In part, I think the state has done that for a money grab. My mother always asked me when I was a kid, she said, if Robbie Ferris jumped off a bridge, would you jump off with him? And I always wanted to say yes, but I knew that wasn't the right answer, and that the best way to handle anything was, to make your decision, based upon your own, what you consider your own values in your own decision. I guess, we're here to make a decision if we want to some degree, if we want to pick and choose which laws we want to recognize and which ones we don't. And for me, I'm not in favor of the picking and choosing. Again, as I mentioned, I have, strong opinion. I don't have a strong opinion either way with respect to the legalization of cannabis. But to me, I think that decision needs to be made by the federal government. We've had numerous administrations that have had the opportunity to make some changes, and they've, you can say, kicked the proverbial can down the road. So again, in my mind, I'm not, don't feel comfortable and don't think, at least in my mind, I don't feel comfortable in changing this. Again, we have regulations, we have laws, we have it in our regulations, that this needs to be conformed with state, local, and federal law. And I'd also, I guess based upon the wording that's in here, I think it says that this is being done under, I think Connecticut's marijuana laws, whatever it is. But without removing, at least in my mind, and again, I'm not an attorney, but without removing from our regulations that a use is illegal if it doesn't comply with local, state, or federal laws, without removing that from our regulations, I think someone could still make the argument that it's not allowed, even though we're saying this comes under state. Well, that's fine, it comes under state, but our regulations still say a use is illegal if it doesn't comply with local, state, and federal. So, I mean, that's where I come out with it. Again, as Mr. Farrell pointed out, certainly there is, the state has approved delivery methods for, for marijuana or cannabis. So that option is always available to people. So that's basically where I come out, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
And I will be staying at a Holiday Inn Express at some point in time.
I guess one of my questions I have, it's a little bit on your comments earlier, but what if the federal government does legalize it and puts it through the distribution system because it put you out of business?
Yes, exactly. That's one of the issues with the notion of waiting till federal legalization to make this happen. I mean, Wallingford's completely missing out on this. If you wait until federal legalization, the reality is that if cannabis didn't have an individual market in every single state, not every state's going to be producing cannabis. It's the way agriculture works. There's certain areas, there's certain environments, there's certain economics in which certain crops get produced because it just works well there. So, 90% of the strawberries are all grown in California. If you had a situation where every state is required to produce their own food, it's a completely different type of market. And that's where cannabis is now and where it's been for a while and likely will continue to be. So federal legalization is not good for us. Rescheduling is phenomenal for us in retrospect. I mean, as a cannabis business, we have IRS Code 280E to adhere to. That comes with that schedule. But it's something that, as mentioned, 40 states for medical allow it, 24 for adult use. And then in the state of Connecticut, different towns and cities. I mean, I feel like, for Wallingford to be missing out when this is going on, in Meriden, with 3 locations, just getting closer and closer and closer to Wallingford. It's something Wallingford residents should have access to, not be, held only to delivery and miss that experience because it's not allowed in town. So that answers your question.
No, it does. It does. I guess my other question is counter to that. What happens if the next president of the United States says, absolutely not, we don't want to do this at all? It shuts the door on every state?
Potentially, although I'd like to point out that Section 903 of the Controlled Substances Act of 1970 contains an express provision dealing with potential federal preemption. And I'm just going to read from that for a second. No provision of this subchapter shall be construed as indicating an intent on the part of Congress to occupy the field in which that provision operates, including criminal penalties, to the exclusion of any state law on the same subject matter, which would otherwise be within the authority of the state, unless there is a positive conflict between that provision of this subchapter and that state law, such that the two laws cannot consistently stand together. And that kind of key phrase there, a positive conflict, there would need to be what many courts, including the Supreme Court, have construed as a physical impossibility of complying with both state and federal law. So, for example, if state law ordered the town of Wallingford to open a cannabis retailer, that would be a physical impossibility. You couldn't conflict with it. So as there is right now, even without any rescheduling or descheduling, there is still a very, very strong argument that Connecticut's laws, just like the laws in many other states, are still valid. So in your scenario, if somebody did come along and they said, we're going to, unless they got rid of the entire Controlled Substances Act, just by rescheduling it, this would still stand, Connecticut's law would still be valid.
And really, just last question, and I'm just asking it, is why not a workshop versus bring it to us this way?
We've had, discussions with Kevin. That's where we started months ago, I think back during the summer. Obviously we've been in business for a number of years and we've studied what's happened across the state of Connecticut. We're not a first jumper. We've waited, we've held back, we've studied what other communities have done. And I think that put us in a good position to make these suggestions. I remember we worked quite cooperatively on farm wineries, and we didn't start at a workshop. So we've given you a text amendment. I have no pride of authorship. At some point I stopped changing the edits to it as input came in from town staff. I do have one that, goes back and addresses all town staff comments. I would tell you the issue is a little personal to me. My mom has suffered from Parkinson's for 30-plus years. And she is helped by marijuana. There are other family members, I'm not in a position to name them, but many of you know who they are, who have used marijuana, and it has improved their lives. So for me, I have no shame in bringing this to Wallingford. I think this is something that is good for the community. You all know my track record. I was at the agency that licenses this, and I want the most regulated, over-regulated perhaps, operation that I can bring to Wallingford. I would note that I previously owned a business called CT Pharma. CT Pharma had a DEA license. We were, I believe, the only company in the entire United States that had such a license, that we worked with Yale University School of Medicine on studies for the DEA, specifically to address how pain is affected by the use of cannabis. Those studies are ongoing. I haven't heard that Yale University has lost their charitable exemption from the federal government. I did note recently that the United States ambassador to Iraq is a cannabis business owner. I believe he's passed a federal background check. So I'll acknowledge what has been said about that the issue is murky. I'm trying to give you the best that I can for Wallingford, and we're very willing to work with you.
Does that answer your question? Yep. It's a long answer.
I'm a lawyer. Long answer.
All right. I just have some comments before we go to the public. I've been on the commission a few years, and I've never heard Washington and the president's name referred to in the application like this, all presidents. A couple questions, a couple comments, but I want to look for clarification on the map. Much like Dave, I would have liked to have seen the color, that version. The green is the area that you're proposing be the CRD.
Yes.
Cannabis Retail District. And if I'm quite familiar with that area because I get my coffee in the green area daily. So the last line is the Stop and Shop Plaza, is that correct?
Yes.
And it goes all the way down to the ShopRite Plaza. Why the carve out for enterprise car rental and...
Accessible by Ives Road, they're not accessible.
ShopRite is...
Can you say that again?
Yes, it was based off of what was accessible from Ives, so Jim could point this out.
So there is no access to these lots via I Road. The way the amendment has been written, it would just be all the properties south of Ives Road that are accessible from it.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. It is one of those challenging, we have 5 misaligned intersections on Route 5, so that's one that I've always in my dream would be corrected, but right now I understand the carve out. Do you have any supporting documentation from either the EDC or the chamber? Did you approach them saying, we're looking to do this, would you support this application?
I've not conversed with either one. I know EDC is meeting this evening, so...
They met downstairs just before us, okay. Okay, so no, okay. And then, listening to the comments of my fellow commissioners, we're in a town that years ago, some youngsters might not remember, we by ordinance didn't allow silly string to be sold in Wallingford. I've been to New Hampshire because my son likes to buy the fireworks, which are permitted in New Hampshire, but not permitted in Connecticut. I understand the difference, and I respect that, Connecticut and towns and the federal government, there's different. I think my desire to not see an empty storefront is kind of pushing me on this one. And I think you have, by allowing and creating more than one area that could permit, I think you've addressed the staff comments as far as I understand. You are agreeable to removing all references to the engineering department doing the measurement?
Sure.
Okay. The commission is hearing an application for a text amendment. Does any member of the public wish to address the commission on this particular application? I'll ask you to raise your hand, be recognized, and state your name and address for the record.
I'm Gerald E. Farrell Sr., father of Jerry Jr. And as Jerry Jr. said, my wife, Mary Ann Farrell, has had Parkinson's diagnosed for 26 years. She is home hospice. The marijuana, she's a medical marijuana card holder, but she doesn't go out. So I go up to Meriden and pick it up for her. I've observed that many of the people there I know who they are. A lot of them are elderly people using the medical marijuana thing. They have to drive to Meriden to do it. You know, medical marijuana, you get 20% off on Mondays. So if Monday it's snowing, you're going to lose quite a bit of money for not going. And a lot of the people are young too. They're Wallingford people. They have to go up there. Statistics show that everybody is drinking less alcohol, and that's big time on young people. Well, a lot of the young people are using marijuana. It helps for restlessness, helps for pain, and we should not require our residents to go up to Meriden. We're also losing money if we don't do it. I know we all have preferences. We all think certain things are bad. One time the country thought alcohol was bad. How did prohibition work? It didn't work real well. I see people smoking. I say, God, I wish they didn't permit smoking. We all do. Some of my clients drive to North Carolina to save the tax money. Don't let your personal preferences on what's good or bad for people affect your vote on this. Favor our residents, let them have what they want. It's not against the law. So that's my own thought, just for my wife too. It's good for her, it works for her. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the public wish to address the commission on this text amendment? Oh, the gentleman standing, and then you can be our closer.
All right, Don Crouch, Economic Development Specialist. We did have a meeting tonight, we didn't have a quorum. Wasn't on the agenda, but talking really more on site selection, as the chairman was mentioning. We were, as a staff, were involved with conversations with the town planner. We did feel that a retail plaza was better than a standalone building. There were talks of other buildings, and really felt that the plazas, particularly that plaza, has been hurting over the years. With Seven Brew across the street, things are picking up in that area. You almost drive by it and don't realize that the plaza's there. So it felt like it was a good spot in a plaza. So I think with expanding it to those other plazas is good. So as staff, I was definitely fine with the buffer. But I felt a standalone. I travel my daughter's youth lacrosse. I go up to Cromwell, there's a standalone building. There's a lot of other standalone buildings. I think that draws more attention, but I felt the plazas, retail plazas were good, especially if we can fix the facade.
Thank you.
I was going to ask.
Rocco DiGenova, 7 Regent Court. And I'm only speaking because my good friends, Jerry Farrell Jr. and Jerry Farrell Sr., have been talking about the senior population. I'm also vice president of the Wallingford Committee on Aging that runs the senior center. And I would say that at the senior center, there is little to no interest in having a cannabis distribution center in Wallingford. That, in fact, the conversations I've had with folks are quite the opposite. They wouldn't like any of the negative aspects that might be associated with such a center locally.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Question, you talked about plazas. Where else was EDC talking about other ones?
I think there was other locations that talked to Jerry and his team about. I don't know if they could probably mention a few of them if they want to, but it was probably a little north of between there from 68 to the Bear.
Yeah, and this whole section of Route 5, it's pretty much all strip malls. The site that we're looking at is I think one of the first ones built. They don't even have building plans downstairs. But that whole area is pretty much, big box stores and high traffic strip malls.
Your building was the original Carvel in Wallingford.
I remember
that. So, all right, no additional comments from the public. Do you have any comments? Okay, thank you. Town planner?
No, I just wanted to point out that if we do want to limit or expand in the future, we'd have to put a cap on it through the regulations, so. Corporation Council just wanted to point that out.
Any other commission comments?
Yeah, I have another question to the town planner. So if, my understanding, kind of going through this, maybe it might be wrong, but if we approve this amendment, they don't come back for us?
No, it would have to be a change of use.
Right, which usually is administrative approval?
Generally, yeah.
But with these types of facilities, usually there's a high traffic volume?
Not really. We've internally had discussions of, in effect, when you enter the door, you're entering what's called a man trap, for lack of a better term, that your license is going to get entered into the system. There are limits on how much one can purchase monthly. So you're in the man trap for a little while. If we can serve between 3 and 8 customers at a time, that would be a lot. There's 70 parking spaces down there. I don't think half of them are used. We've given you all this information about the site.
I know, it's not, I know, that's what I'm having a hard time with, right? Like you're saying, this isn't the site, it could be the site, but it isn't the site.
No, we have a lease, we are under lease.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, so that plays into this too, because I've seen them where people are out the door. Like, I have seen them.
For pre-orders.
Well, yeah, right, I mean, just in general, right? And if you start backing up, even if you can't service them, they could be waiting, and now you have, 7 Brew, when someone brought up 7 Brew, I had kind of a nightmare flashback of going down Route 5, and if you have that on both sides now, that's concerning, right? That's already a terrible traffic area. It's just something that I was thinking about. You're not gonna have a traffic study or anything done, so I
No,
get
and
it.
some members of the commission will remember that previously I've represented Dunkin' Donuts in some of their applications. I came to learn a lot about traffic engineering representing Dunkin' Donuts, enough to call up the guy who's done a lot of Dunkin' Donuts traffic engineering stuff. And he said, you're not tripping the wire on this. I should have gotten a letter that said that, but it's very limited according to what we internally feel and apparently what the standard.
Yeah, I know that area, I know that plaza really well. And when you go into Cumberland Farms, you could take a left out of Cumbies. So if you have someone taking a right, because that's a one-way usually, that's supposed to be, I believe, I don't think there's any signs there, but it's supposed to be one way. Out of your potential lot, right? And I just see it potentially being an issue, because I go there quite often, and getting out of there, taking a left is impossible. And taking a right out of Cumberland Farms is impossible. So that's what my head's at. But obviously, you have a lease, but it's not really a site plan eval right now, so that's kind of difficult.
We tried to give you as much information because this type of business is new to Wallingford, and to give you the context for as much of it as we could.
I appreciate that.
I would just like to add that the high traffic volumes that you see usually have to do when places first open up and when the industry's new. What we're seeing now in Connecticut, even for ones that open up, they don't even have a grand opening anymore.
Right.
It's just not worth it. And
it's a lot of the same companies too.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Certainly. I mean, we have to remember, we're extremely late to the party here when it comes to this. I mean, it's nice to think from our perspective that there'd be lines out the door. I don't think that's going to be the case. I almost wish it would be, but we're super late to the party here. There's over 60 in the state. I mean, it's not a groundbreaking event for maybe anybody outside of Wallingford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the commission have any comments?
I'll just make a public comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd just like to express my appreciation to Commissioner Seichter and actually Commissioner Sanders, who wrote a note about the legality. Really respect your opinions and, you know, appreciate your comments on that. I know it's really tough in that regard. So, thank you. I will say, I live near one in Meriden, and I drive by all the time. I don't stop in, but I do drive by a lot, and I've never seen any, you know, bad activity up there. I've never seen long lines. So I think, you know, some of those concerns might be a little overblown, especially in Meriden where it's located, and I drive by. I've never seen any issues there, so, you know, again, I would support this location. Thank you.
Just a comment, thank you. Just a comment to the traffic. I'm very familiar with that Route 5 traffic, and I remember when Sonic was first approved, and now it's dead, you know, and certainly Seven Brew was still in its infancy, because we were the second in the state, and frankly, I remember Gavea Vineyards. It was, you know, one of the first half dozen approved, and everything changes, but I mean, traffic on Route 5 is consistent, so it just readjusts. So, unless there's any other comments, I'd like to, oh, sorry.
Yeah, just one further comment, just to be crystal clear. As I mentioned, I don't have an opinion one way or the other, you know, concerning whether or not cannabis, marijuana should be legalized. I don't have an opinion on that, or a strong opinion one way or the other, so I want to make that very clear. However, you know, I look at it that I don't think, I don't want to be in a position where I'm picking and choosing which laws I think this town should respect or stand by and which ones we shouldn't. I think that's a bad precedent to go down. You know, I think that if we decide to approve this, I would suggest then we should strike from our regulations the fact that any use would have to adhere to federal law. I mean, let's just, so then if we come to another situation like this, we don't have to wring our hands, or at least I don't have to wring my hands and say, do I agree with it or not? But again, to me, it has nothing to do with the use. It just simply has to do with, you know, we have laws, and we like to say we're, you know, a town perhaps, a community that adheres to laws. So I just think that that's, at least that's something that I focus on. And I'll simply leave it at that.
Thank you, sir. At this point, unless there's any other comments, I think it'd be oh, sorry, go ahead, Cheryl.
I've been sitting here listening to the whole thing, figuring out how I was going to word it, and I agree with Commissioner Seichter on exactly what you just said. There are federal laws put into place for a reason, and when you start picking and choosing, then you start picking and choosing. That's pretty much all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Kevin.
Just a minor inconsistency if you are going to vote on it. You submitted text to say 416B2, but that's use group B, so it would have to be subsection probably I, I'm guessing. They just don't have it. It looks like it's kind of not structured correctly to fit into the regs. It goes straight from 416B, then 2, but then there's no subsection on it, so would that be I you're adding it to?
Yeah.
I guess.
So, actually, what do we want to add here? Oh.
It was just labeled incorrectly by like a minor error. It's 416B2 under use group B, but then there's uses A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, so I'm guessing that had under I. Yeah.
That's Cannabis Week.
Yeah.
I don't see.
It's just under the regs under the RF40 zone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that.
I'm looking at the cannabis regulation.
And then would you label A, B, C, D, E, F, and all your subsections under that, like a lowercase 1, 2?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just make that note.
I'd just like to state, I mean, and I know the last couple of commissioners have talked about federal law, state law. I reminded when, yesterday I had the opportunity in town to go to the Rod and Gun Club. And I, heard all the shooting, because it was first Sunday of the month, a lot of shooting out there, drive-by Blue Trail Range, a lot of shooting out there. Wallingford is one of the few towns in Haven County that it permits gun sales. Most other towns have said no more. Federally regulated, but the town makes its own rules. So there's two sides of each coin in the law thing. So, with that, I will ask for a motion on the application.
Close public hearing.
Is this a public hearing? Sorry. First off, can I ask for a motion to close the public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing for application 502-26, text amendment request for Quinnipiac Valley Growth Partners to add cannabis retailer as an allowed use in the R40 Route 5 zoning district. Text amendment will alter sections 1.4, 6.34, and 4.16I.
Motion made to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And now for a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve application 502-26, cannabis retailers text amendment for section 1.4, 6.34, and 4.16.I. Zoning text amendment to sections 1.4.
Hold on one second. It's I just want to clarify. It's 416 B2I.
B2I. I'll amend that to say section 4.16.B.2I.I.
Correct, yes.
To add cannabis retailer as an allowed use in the RF40 Route 5 district on language dated March 18th, 2026, because of the business benefit to the citizens of Wallingford not having to travel out of town for their supplies, with the following condition of approval, that the text amendment eliminate the Wallingford town engineer and replace that with accepted language as approved by the town planner.
Motion was made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Voting in which Commissioner Seichter?
No.
No.
What do you mean? No.
Yes.
Yes. Motion fails.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have a special permit application for Legas Road, 110 Legas Road is the applicant or representative here. I'll ask the secretary to acknowledge the correspondence and read the legal notice.
Just point of clarification, this is for the re-subdivision?
No, it's for the, sorry, this is not a public hearing, it's just a special permit, minor modification.
Number 4, correct?
Yeah.
Or
So
number 5?
Number 5, sorry.
No legal notice.
Any correspondence?
There was, this is from 5.
I apologize, yeah, this is number 5 under other business, special
So
permit.
this is for this. There is something that just came in from Taylor Daigle, dated Thursday, March 12th. This wasn't included in the packet. This was handed to us this afternoon. So from Taylor Daigle to DPH, excuse me, regarding special permit modification materials, indicating that the watershed aquifer project notification form. I believe there was also an email that came in. Bear with me and I'll pull that up. There's an email dated April 13, 2026 that came in this afternoon from Michelle Deli Palali. And then there's a inspection report dated 3/24/26 from the fire marshal. And a letter from the town engineering department dated April 9, 2026.
Thank you. Before we begin, we didn't have a chance to speak prior to the public meeting because this should be done publicly. So you have 2 applications. We're opening up this one, but upon consultation with the town attorney this afternoon, we can open this public hearing or this application, but we should not take action because this is Part B to Part A, which is a re-subdivision. So advice from the town attorney late today, didn't have a chance to notify you, we'll open this portion of this new business, if you will, special permit, but it was suggested not to take action. The public hearing on the re-subdivision will be heard next month. There was a notification issue, so I know you applied to do together, and normally that would work, but because that one's not ready, I just want to state that on the record at the very beginning. So I know you don't have time to consult with the town attorney, but I consulted with her late this afternoon, so it was literally right before the end of the day. So I just wanted to clarify. I hope that's okay with you, but that was guidance from the town attorney, because normally if they were done together, it'd be fine, but we can't do one without the other.
I'll briefly introduce myself.
Sure.
My name is Megan Miles. I'm a land use attorney at Carmody, Torrance, Sandag, and Hennessy. Office address for the records is 195 Church Street in New Haven. So yes, we have filed 2 applications with this commission. One is for re-subdivision approval, and one is what is on the agenda this evening, which was requesting a minor modification to the old historic special permit approval for this office development to permit a parking waiver. In other words, to reduce the required amount of parking for the development under zoning. We requested that be handled as a minor modification under your regulations would not require a public hearing. When I filed the applications, I filed them at the same time, and I filed it for the special permit modification as subdivision, which also does not require a public hearing. Upon review of our filing and getting consultation with the town attorney, the decision was made that that should process as a re-subdivision, which then triggered the public hearing requirement, and that's what led to added layers of complication to review of these materials. We were ready to go tonight, so we did want to continue to present on simply the parking waiver, understanding that it is to facilitate a companion re-subdivision of the site, but we will not speak about that tonight because I am very sensitive to public hearing requirements. We can't answer any questions of that. We have to wait to open the public hearing. So that was my plan for this evening, if that is acceptable. Okay, great.
We're like-minded.
Thank you. Okay, I'm also very sensitive to public hearing requirements. So, and for the reference for people in the crowd, I will mail out a new mailing for notifying of the hearing next month on the re-subdivision. It's going to be renoticed in the paper, so that will happen. But to introduce who else is at the table with me, my firm represents the property owner, which is KSCGH Partners LLC. With me tonight is Tirdad Shabazi from the owner, representing the ownership. and then Tom Daly of SLR, who is our site engineer for this project. This is an application for special permit modification. We've requested it be processed as a minor modification because this is an existing development. It's been operating under a special permit for 20 years, and our special permit request is actually to align with existing conditions for parking that's developed over the years. So we felt that there was no impacts in essentially updating the zoning requirements for the site to mirror existing conditions. My presentation, I was going to very briefly overview the property and existing conditions, the old permit, just to orient you to the site again, and then go into the waiver request. I do also have to make one requested revision to our papers on this. Reviewing this in advance with Tom Daly and reviewing the numbers, the parking waiver request, if I can stand up and approach the board. So the site parking all over the site here. The parking waiver request at a very high level was contemplated for this parking area here. I notice you're trying to see. For this parking area here, down to the south of the site, to not be required under zoning. So doing the math on that, we requested in our papers that the waiver be granted to permit 1,001 parking spaces on the site. Tom has very politely told me that I'm not very good at math, and the waiver actually should be to permit 950 spaces on the site. So now understanding that this is to be tabled and no decision made tonight, I'm happy to submit a letter into the record clarifying that the waiver request, if acceptable and you're amenable to approve, would be for 950 spaces on the site. So that, I wanted to clarify that as well. But to now briefly overview the property, the address is 110 Legas Road. It's also known as 108 Legas Road. It fronts on Legas Road. It abuts I-91. It abuts Barnes Road, which is Connecticut Route 69. And it is zoned Watershed Interchange District, and it is also within the Watershed Protection Overlay District. So when this office development was approved, it actually was not zoned that. It was in an industrial zone which required office by special permit approval. Just want to note that under current regulations, this office development actually would only require site plan approval. It's no longer a special permit use. So that's been an update to the zoning regulations. The property itself is 105.8 acres. It is a very large site, a very prominent site from I-91. The existing improvements on this site, though, only encompass 44 acres. So, and if they are improved with an office building that is 289,000 square feet, constructed circa 2007, and 1,450 parking spaces, 1,450 parking spaces. Also full of stormwater detention system, detention basins, all of that. The remainder of the site is undeveloped. The site, my understanding, has been financially distressed for some time. The office space is significantly underutilized. It is not fully tenanted. It has not been fully tenanted for some time. And the owner, next to me, they actually purchased the site from a court-appointed receiver. So it had been in receivership. But the exciting thing is they're looking to actually reinvest in the site and revitalize it. So we are here tonight for a parking waiver request. The old special permit for the site noted that 1,219 spaces were required and 1,416 were to be provided. So that's what was approved. It was approved to have more parking than required under zoning. Today, there's actually even more parking provided. There's 1,450 spaces on the site, and then there's a reserve area for another 300 more. So significant parking was provided on the site. And this existing requirement, this is still the parking requirement in your zoning regulations, I believe, but it's 4 per thousand for office. We requested, as I mentioned, amended to reduce the requirement to 950 spaces. This would be about 3.3 spaces per thousand. So not bringing it down completely to 3 per thousand, but about 3.3 per thousand. And our reasons for this is as follows. One is based on years of actual use of the site, have established that the provision of 1,100 spaces as required under zoning is unnecessary. For many, many years, the access to that entire southern parking area has just been completely restricted and unused. I drove by the site, I think it was in late January, it had just snowed. There's a gate, it was gated off, the snow hadn't been plowed. Office employees, it looked like we were going on a walk back there to get out of the office and go for a walk, but it's not being used for parking, and it hasn't been for some time. So actual conditions right now don't support the need for this parking for zoning purposes. But again, recognizing that Wallingford would like this building fully tenanted. So if this building was fully tenanted, would there still be sufficient parking on the site to support that? And as a landlord, the owner also wants to make sure that there's enough parking on the site to fully tenant out the building. I believe the paperwork establishes that 3 per thousand is actually the appropriate parking standard for office developments in Connecticut today. This is the standard followed by other office developments owned by the applicant. And then also that is the standard established by what's known as the ITE Parking Generation Manual. And the town engineer submitted a letter into the record for this application outlining what the ITE standards are for this site, how they would apply, and what the engineer believes would be an appropriate required level of parking for this site. And in that letter, she notes that the parking demand ranges from 1.48 spaces to 3.26 spaces per thousand for general corporate office parks ITE standards. So here she concludes that that would equate to 941 spaces, or what should be considered needed for this site under ITE generation standards. And also what she notes is that these standards that are followed are actually from 2019, and that's important because 2020 onwards significantly changed office work habits. Workplace trends have shifted to hybrid work, shifted to more shared workspace models. The point being that 2019 standard is honestly probably high under modern working. And also an interesting point is that I mentioned how the zoning has since changed for the property since it was approved, and now it's in a watershed interchange district. And reviewing the purpose of that section, it's clear that development is designed to protect the public water supply watershed, and so it's very low impact development. That's what's contemplated, and it actually sets a maximum requirement for parking at 120%, and now this site in existing conditions doesn't comply with that. It's over the maximum that's now contemplated on the site. So kind of the elephant in the room is like, it's been like this for years. Why now? Why are you here tonight to ask for permission to reduce the required parking? And it is to facilitate subdivision of the site, which we are not here for tonight. It's going to be a public hearing at the next meeting. But the point being that we're not looking to like rip up this parking area, get rid of it. It's going to stay as an option for parking, but it's not being used to its highest and best use. It should be parking for future development or something along those lines. So by reducing the zoning requirement for the office development, it opens that parking up to be used for something else that actually needs the parking, should that get approval in the future. So exactly, so the parking area can be used for new opportunities. And an interesting thing too is that this waiver or ability, this waiver approval that you can issue is actually only found in the regulations for the watershed interchange district. And again, I think is to encourage the least amount of parking. It encourages developments that actually have the amount of parking that you need, not like a strict zoning standard. And so it's to discourage excessive parking areas, facilitate the highest amount of parking areas. So let me see here. We note in our papers that we believe the waiver complies with the waiver regulation, section 4.10.d3. Specifically, you're amenable, you have this right to grant a waiver, but you want to make sure that if parking proves to be needed, like the waiver was excessive, you actually need more parking, that there's parking available if it's needed. And that is the case. The parking area is going to stay. It's going to be on the site. And I will address how it will be handled in subdivision at that public hearing. And I also note that it can, despite the fact this would now be a site plan use, I believe this still complies with the special permit standards. It supports the continued success of the office development by meeting actual parking demand. Happy to answer any questions, but that was it.
Thank you very much for that. I should have, and again, I know I expressed my conversation with the town attorney. Before we go to regular questions from the commission, the first thing as a commission we should be discussing is the modification to basically, we should agree if this is a minor modification or a major before we go into even further. No matter what, they have to come back next month for the other one, but this would be appropriate time for us to discuss. As presented, is this a minor or major modification to the existing special permit? I'll open it up.
Minor.
Go ahead.
I would say, in my mind, I think it's clearly a minor modification.
Concur?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree. Okay, so now we've cleared that.
So you'd have to vote on it, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
formal.
we'll need a formal.
Need a motion?
Well, yeah, I want to make sure we do this right. So, yeah, we've opened up the hearing, so yeah, let's vote on whether it's major or minor before we go further.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for special permit KSCGH Partners LLC, 110 Leagues Road, minor modification parking reduction for application 403-26 has been determined to be a minor modification.
Motions are made to treat this as a minor modification. Is there a second?
Second.
Voting beginning with
Yes.
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 And yes.
yes. Okay. Now to continue, sorry, but all the technicalities. Now, do any commissioners have any questions based upon the applicant's presentation?
I just have one.
Okay.
Quick. So, thank you for all the figures and especially the pre-19, all that. I'm just curious, do you have a rough idea of how many people do use the space today? I mean, I drive by there all the time. I could guesstimate too, because it is usually.
We can get the head counts for you.
Yeah, I'm just.
I think it's about somewhere between 350 to 400 between the two companies that are there.
So, 30 to 40% of the current spaces are being utilized.
33%.
Yeah. That's it.
Okay.
I just have one quick comment. Just on your maps, you have some inconsistencies between that map and then another map that you presented to us. And it just deals with the non-residential properties as far as the various ownership of those properties. So on this map, on the one that's on to the left of, I think it's Miles Drive, you're showing that as two separate properties. On this map, you're showing, no, further up.
This one.
Yeah, and on this map, you're showing it as one property, and the ownerships are different on this particular map, of those properties as well as the other ones.
Okay.
So it's just to clarify the maps, so make sure all of your maps are consistent with the
Okay.
ownership of the abutting non-residential properties.
I think that's one lot.
Yeah, that's one lot, yeah,
It's a lot now.
that's one lot, that's correct. And I think the ownership on the right side, where the hotels are,
They're all now.
yeah, the names are different on that one versus this map that you gave us. So I mean, it's a minor thing, but just to correct them so it all works.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Okay. The commission is hearing application. We just voted to treat this as minor modification of the special permit. We will continue this to our next meeting. However, we have some people who've been patiently waiting. Does any member of the public wish to address the commission regarding this application? You will have an opportunity next month as well, if interested.
I'm here for the development, not for the
Oh,
parking.
okay.
Because you know where we are,
Okay.
next to Katie, so
Okay.
yeah, that's why we're here.
Unless there's any other comments, anything, so we'll see you next month.
Yes, we will.
You'll do proper notification for the other, and we'll
Yes.
continue this application for next month.
Correct.
And we've already agreed to treat it as minor.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
We'll need a motion to continue this to our May meeting.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to continue application 403-26 to our May meeting.
Motions are made to continue, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
It's got a wide range of applications.
Yes.
A lot of variety.
Not normal, big.
They do meet. No, that's not mine,
What's that?
We'll see you in a minute.
Well, on the highest follow So we're 26, so we can walk through, we have just under 3 so you walk right up back our property and down that big park. Which I can 26, yeah. We're gonna go on my son has to start back there.
All understood, and so just looking for the next
Oh, you have a copy for yourself and yours?
No, it's Jacob.
No, it can't. But we can still access it.
and then
You know, I mean, I'd love to see this, read the room, right?
No, I understand.
I'm not surprised, but sometimes it's nice to hear, oh, I didn't know. Excuse me. Excuse me. We still have other things to talk about. Can I ask you to go step in the hallway? All right, continuing on, don't worry. Continuing on our agenda, we are at agenda item number 6. Public discussion, update and review of proposed recommendations for the plan of conservation and development by Connors Engineering Design. Please introduce yourself, remind us who you are, and walk us through your brief presentation.
All right. So, my name is Jacob Robinson. Again, we met.
That one should suffice.
We met several months ago at our first Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, where I talked you through the planned process. It's been a few months, and we just have some updates. So kind of the main couple things that we're going to go about here. We will get the text set up. And mostly the big kind of two things that we want to go through here are an update on the timeline of the project, a couple engagement updates, and then I'm not going to go through every single recommendation as I sent those to you all individually prior to this, but I will be going through kind of the broad strokes of the thematic recommendations and feedback, as well as the land use recommendations and feedback, and I will be here to hear anyone's, there we go, something's happening. I will be here to hear everyone's feedback on those, for those, maybe something's not happening here, for those recommendations that, perfect.
Thank you.
That we sent out previously, and then next steps, hopefully, we can move it along to help you guys get out of here at a reasonable time. So update to the timeline. We are in almost most of the way through it. There's a bit of a lag kind of at the end, as there is that 2-month period after the finalization of the master plan, that 2-month period that's called by Connecticut General Statutes 823 for prior to the adoption meeting, but we are at the end right now kind of producing a final draft of the plan that should be done by the end of the month, and then we will be meeting with the steering committee and you all once again, kind of toward the end of next month, early June, and then have the final public workshop to review the draft of the plan. So updates, since we last met, we had a public survey and we had over 1,200 responses to that, thanks to the planning department's good work and sending that out in utility bills. So massive responses, great. Majority of respondents were from the eastern and western portions of the town, kind of those two individual low-density residential districts that we talked about at the beginning of the planning process. About 80% of the respondents were between ages 35 and 74, and widely distributed within that bracket of ages. Preliminary survey takeaways. What people value in Wallingford is proximity to goods, services, dining and entertainment, affordability and walking and biking opportunities, top 3 priorities for future land uses, protect natural resources and open space, more walkable mixed-use areas like Wallingford Center, strengthen residential neighborhoods, top 3 development priorities, attract and support local industry, more events and entertainment, and expand recreational opportunities. So coming up, we have several upcoming pop-ups, kind of where we'll be sharing the preliminary plan recommendations and hearing back from people, all kind of in that first half of May. Again, I sent you all the preliminary thematic recommendations. These came through an iterative process of working with the town team, developing the recommendations through working with focus groups. We had about 13 different focus group meetings throughout the hearing process. That's also including the first public meeting that we had, where we had about 60 people come out. Fantastic turnout. So this is all, and we also met with the mayor to review these thematic recommendations. So iterative process. I'm going to go through we created a set of kind of overarching visions for each of the themes that kind of address some of the feedback that we heard at the steering committee meeting that we had a couple weeks ago, that there should be more focus on kind of the bigger picture. So we have those thematic visions, and then I'm going to go through each of the goals. I'm not going to go through all the strategies. We'd be here all night. Kind of diving into it, so the housing recommendations, overarching thematic vision is assisting in production of new housing that meets the stages, meets the needs of a variety of incomes and life stages, provide services which make housing more accessible for those in need, centralize and enhance housing support services, encourage and assist housing production in strategic locations, and improving community awareness regarding housing development. So for development, the overarching thematic vision, increasing access to Wallingford's many natural, arts, entertainment, agricultural, seasonal, and historic assets to enhance quality of life and stimulate the local economy. Ensure these assets are maintained and preserved. So the goals underneath that are pursue development and programming which enhances the visitor friendliness of town center, improve vibrancy of the built environment in town center, encourage tourism to support Wallingford's commercial and regional assets, preserve and promote historic assets, support and protect Wallingford's agricultural economy and farming economy, foster business practices which better support and promote businesses, promote and expand community events to reach a wider audience, update the town zoning code, take steps to minimize community risk reduction, revitalize the Tracy neighborhood, and revisit relationship with Meriden Markham Airport. For transportation, the overarching vision is increase ease and comfort of travel around Wallingford, regardless of mode of travel, maintain and improve the town's transportation systems to meet the varying needs of residents, commuters, and businesses. And the goals underneath that are undertake a variety of feasibility studies to identify opportunities and projects which expand access to alternative transportation modes, initiate and continue the following intersection study area designs, continue and facilitate implementation of the following projects, adopt transportation design policies to incorporate accessibility. For municipal facilities and services, overarching vision is make municipal resources more accessible to users and support community organizations, ensure municipal land and facilities are maintained to provide a high quality of service. Improve and increase accessibility of GIS and mapping services, continue to enhance town communications and digital services, provide resources to maintain recreational and open spaces, expand and maintain municipal buildings to meet service needs, balance maintenance and expansion of utilities between development and conservation, continue partnering with the Board of Education, continue to support, enhance, and increase access to community programming, and lastly, environmental, overarching thematic vision, conserve Wallingford's valuable natural resources and plan for sustainable development which will benefit future generations. And goals under that, increase public access to parks and town-owned open spaces, actively monitor and manage the town's ecosystems and wildlife, and to protect the town's water resources, and to pursue policies and projects to increase sustainability and resiliency of the community. I'm not going to go through each of the individual land use recommendations, but I will be hearing any comments on any of the goals, strategies, overarching visions that were sent out previously.
Anybody?
Yeah, it would have been helpful on what you presented to us. It didn't give us the overreaching vision. You mentioned that initially, and then we have all of the kind of the points that you're looking to do, say for transportation. That would have been just helpful to have that first in the in the presentation. At least for my benefit.
Understood. Yeah. So what you have there, that was sent out prior to when those were made. These overarching visions were made. I know you made sort of a similar comment at the steering committee meeting, but these were made kind of in response to that in the last few days.
Okay.
So
yeah.
apologies for that.
Yeah. And just some things. These are some of the comments that I had made in the steering committee concerning transportation. We talk about, not to get into the minutia, but the Tully Street Bridge and all that. As I mentioned, the continuing the replacement of that, certainly that's important. But to me, I think a bridge that the town should be looking at is the John Street Bridge. There we have an Amazon facility. It's a last mile facility. A good number of their delivery vehicles use the John Street Bridge. So to me, I think that should be something that should be on the town's radar, certainly not in the next year or so, but should be. This is a 10-year plan. Right. I think that's something that should be included in there. Right. The other thing I mentioned, again, when we're looking at transportation, was just at least in my mind, I think it should be included, bus shelters, especially on Route 5. Northern Route 5, you got Walmart, you have others, big box stores that are there. There's a lot of people that use the buses. I think that's something that the town, in conjunction with the state, at least in my mind, need to should focus on. Because again, there's a lot of people that use it. The state puts a big impact on the Shoreline East Rail service and improving that and putting more trains on. I think that's great, but a lot of people use the buses in that particular area. So I guess I'd like to consider that to be put into the plan. And my other comments are just kind of like other kind of nitnoid comments. And again, I mentioned to you before, we want to support the Wallace Pond Dam removal. I have no clue where that is because I think you're talking about Community Lake, I think. And to me, just from a wording standpoint, I'd much rather see to say Community Lake, dam removal rather than Wallace Pond, simply because I think most people, or at least I have no clue what Wallace Pond is. And it's the same thing just with the redevelopment. They're looking to redevelop the Wooding Kaplan property. Well, there is no Wooding Kaplan property. The Kaplan property, that's all privately owned. That's already been developed a little bit more than what it was. So I think we're really focusing on what was the Wooding property and the parking lot that's there. I would look at that. And the other thing that would have been helpful, where the draft Planning and Zoning Commission internal review, the various zones, just to have a chart. We have the verbiage as far as, the Yalesville South Turnpike, what we're looking to do in that and the other 5 zones, to have the chart, just so I know which areas we're talking about for these specific zones, how that's carved out in the town. That, to me, that would be helpful, and I suspect very helpful to everyone else. But other than that, I certainly commend you and the steering committee work that you've done on this. Thank you.
Anyone else in the commission? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look at this and, there's you're boiling the ocean here. There's a ton of things which are, pretty obvious, and they get, carried from one decade to the next, quite frankly. You met with all of the key stakeholders in town, engineering, water, sewer, planning. What commonality, what themes kind of came from all those meetings? I mean, we're not going to be able to do everything that's in here. We haven't done half of what was in the last one and the previous one before that. What, and I mentioned it earlier in one of the applications, what do we have to do to grow the town in the appropriate manner? And, it's been talked about before. I mentioned it again in one of the applications today, that we need to figure out where we have public water, where we have sewers, public sewers, so we can increase housing and, develop and grow the community. So what kind of things like that is the mayor, the town council, Rob Baltramitis, Allison, what are they grappling with that should be, our key target goals for this? Is there anything that, stands out?
So as we did meet with many stakeholders, both many town departments. We met many town departments actually reviewed these individual, this whole list, and many had a lot of comments that were incorporated into it. I think that it's really hard to say any specific one. The way these strategies, these overarching thematic goals, and then below them there's goals, and then below them there are individual strategies. They're kind of organized into trees, which kind of get are more broad, and then become a little bit less broad, and then become more specific. It's hard to, the whole point of having the amount of strategies that we have and identified here is because there is, every town, every municipality has comprehensive needs that, when meeting with each of the departments and each of the stakeholders, a lot of them talked about a lot of different things that are needed throughout the town. When we heard from when we heard from the trail advocates group, they talked about trails. When we heard from Wallingford Center Inc. and a few of the major wineries, and when talking about tourism, they talked about tourism, they talked about promoting the town's events, they talked about working businesses working better together, they talked about marketing at the town in general. I mean, maybe one of the biggest things that we heard from that came across multiple stakeholder groups is that there needs to be better communication and marketing throughout the town, not only from the town to stakeholders, but to the state in general. I mean, they talked about needing better digital services. They talked about expanding social media, being able to talk to residents more, and share a lot more of the assets that are in town so that residents know that these things exist and are out there for them to use. I mean, that's kind of one of the big things that we heard, and kind of what people want to see in town center, and kind of more community building in town center, more business opportunities, kind of those sorts of things, more of a buzz around town center. I'd say maybe those are the biggest two things that we saw here. But in the implementation portion of the plan, we are going to be identifying kind of short-term goals, kind of things that will help kick off the plan and kind of make big impacts at the beginning of the implementation of the plan, things that are like 1 to 2 years, the first 1 to 2 years, where they set a course for the plan and kind of get the ball really rolling. So that should help in kind of moving forward the implementation of the plan and kind of setting a good track for implementation in the next 10 years.
Okay. Communication, marketing, town center. I can think of a few others. Again, housing always comes up. It sounds like it's a key thematic goal.
I could chime in a little bit on this.
Sure, I mean,
I'd say commonalities are obviously improving transportation, traffic, looking at uses that promote, better uses in the areas that are currently zoned, kind of, commercial areas. Maybe we look at eliminating certain uses that are contributing, improving intersections. I think that was a big part of this. Walkability, sidewalk connectivity. I'd say conservation was, I don't think a lot of people wanted to expand any of the zoning, in an egregious manner. I think it was more infill development and potentially promote housing. I don't know, maybe you guys can help me out a bit, but I don't know if I feel like the commonalities were more so keeping the town as it is, but improving upon what, like town center. It's nice as it is, but there's always room for improvement. I think that was the overarching theme that I could relay. But.
So I think you kind of explained it well as to where I'm headed.
Yeah.
Because, you mentioned housing, and we talked about making those zoning changes to affect that.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what we need to see, how it's all tied together. I mean, those items are listed in here, but it's not a cause and effect, so to speak. As far as how it will work. So I'll pass the baton. I think again we need to come up with a couple of major themes and have the bullet points to get those done. Thanks.
all right. So move on to a couple of the last slides. Mentioned the the 4 public engagement events that are coming up, the next steering committee meeting and PCC special meeting will be in late May. Possibility they'll be combined. We need to confirm that. And the last public meeting will be in early June. As far as plan development goes, we'll finalize the land use and policy recommendations, complete the implementation plan, and draft that plan document. We'll have it out to both the steering committee and the Planning and Zoning Commission before we meet next. And that's it.
This is a, not a public hearing, but it's on the agenda. We always take public comment. You folks have stood with us a little while. Any member of the public wish to address the commission or the consultant on this topic?
Come on, Jack.
Flip a coin.
I'm not sure how this fits in. There's so many things going on in town right now. The Wegus Road thing is kind of...
Could you state your name and
I'm
address for the
sorry.
record?
I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
We know who you are.
Jack Eric Honey, 18 Martin Trail on Spring Lake. I'm going to beat an old horse here a little bit tonight. One thing, the question you're asking about, what's important. What is important is everybody's got water. Everybody's water in firm, we all drink water. So that's my main focus, water. I'm going to back up a little bit because what really got me involved with this was the data center a year and a half ago. And changes were made. We can now have a data center in town. Since then, I've done research on quite a few related data center topics because of things I heard during those meetings. One was our electric rates are going to get less. I think it was Mr. Fitzsimmons beat on that one, and they assured us, or they really thought our electric was good. I think we know better now. We've learned a lot in a year. Well, Connecticut has an abundance of electricity. Well, we might have the ability to generate it, but we don't have the fuel for it. New England is not situated. We don't have a natural gas field. We have to import everything. They were going to tie into the electric wires up on the street. It's not the case. They need high voltage lines coming in. They said the data center is good for Wallingford. It's not good for Wallingford. Talked about low frequency noise. I'm working on that through the ordinance committee. This was an interesting one, and I know Mr. Clan brought this up. I wanted to know what the House bill really was taxable, what was not taxable. It was all in black and white. It was a 13, 15-page report. Basically, nothing is taxed. Local tax, state tax, any kind of taxes. It's House Bill 6514 that I have a whole report just on that. Actually, I have about 8 or 10 reports ready to spring if someone shows up with a data center. I just need to put a date on them, send them to the Inland Wetlands Waters Commission or the Town Council. And finally, what I should really be talking only about is the impact on the environment. And I'm going to zero in on the Muddy River Basin. It's a pretty large chunk of the map up there on the east side. It provides a large percentage of water, public water, and it's safe to drink. I'm going to mention it's safe to drink because I just had an experience. I went down to see my daughter about a month ago in Corpus Christi, Texas, and she never mentioned a word about this. Found out they've got a bad water problem. They don't have water. Their reservoir is just about empty, and they're now tapping into wells, and the water quality there's no regulations for water quality down there, and they're actually being told you probably shouldn't drink it. So now she's got a water bottle, 5-gallon water bottle for her, and she's got city water coming in that she flushes toilet with and takes showers. And to make it worse, if she uses too many gallons every month, there's a surcharge on her water. It's all online. It's a mess. Before I go any farther, Wallingford's water is very safe to drink. It's right up there. But we don't think about water until, like my daughter, it's not there or it's bad. First thing I'm going to talk about is runoff. And this was kind of written for the Wegus Road thing, but there's a few other things going on in town right now. the runoff, there's particles in the water. It causes cloudiness in the reservoir, and it can come from many sources. But the major ones are construction, the impervious surfaces, and the topography. The Muddy River has not been spared any of those three. The Muddy River has a very fine silt when we do put dirt in it. And a check for that is checking for turbidity, which this town of Wallingford does all the time. Or it's how clear our reservoir is. And the town of Wallingford has the filter to get it down to the standard level. The topography, or the steepness of hills, it's 266 feet from Carpenter Lane, where the Muddy River starts, to the Mackenzie Reservoir. A metric used for measuring downhill water flow is a gradient. A gradient is a 1 foot drop per 1,000 feet. Now, just looking at the first one, there's some clear cutting going on up on Carpenter Lane, right next to the power plant at 60 Carpenter Lane. I went by it the other day. I couldn't believe what I saw. It's the side of a hill, stripped, and a pile of rocks ready to go. And all we need is a nice spring rainstorm. And it's going to dump everything right into the Muddy River, right where it starts. It's going to come through the Bristol Myers property at a gradient of 29. A gradient of 25 is considered very high and has the ability to move large amounts of water and sediment quickly. That's a 29 going across Bristol Myers. I know where the mud's going to go because I live on Spring Lake. I'm the first stop for the mud. As it comes across Hampton Trail again, guys will be digging out their driveways. Ed Bradley, he's been trying to build barriers for it. He can't win. There's another one, and I know you're familiar with this one, the intersection of Durham Road and Glebe Road. I walk by there every day. Nothing has changed in 3 weeks. There's 5 trucks sit there, 5 big yellow Caterpillar trucks. There's 8 or 10 very large piles of open dirt. There's 3 detention ponds. And I specifically walk over close every day. One of them is at least half, 3/4 full, muddy water, doesn't go down. It just won't go down. That may be the reason they're not doing anything. That area is interesting, again, because of Liggis Road. If it does rain, that water is going to come down, it's going to come down to the Muddy River. It'll cross 91, maybe over the highway or through the storm sewer system. Prior to 2005, I thought the Liggis Road 91 area did not empty into the reservoir, into the Mackenzie Reservoir. I thought it was, the North Farms is right across the street. It looks like it's downhill at North Farm. That must all go right into North Farms Reservoir. Drove home one day and 91 was closed. What had happened was they were putting in the mortgage guarantee, and we got the rain. Typical spring rain. The water and mud came right across 91. They actually had to close, I think the reservoir was closed for that, maybe not. Maybe it was just from Bristol Myers. I'm sorry.
If I could, we're talking about the plan of conservation development. I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying, but I'm trying to stay focused. So if you could steer your comments towards
I'm sorry, like I said, it was
POCD. No, you're a friend of the commission, but at the same time, I'm thinking, are you asking us to incorporate some of this into the plan?
It's past my bedtime, if you
Sorry?
What I do want to mention, there's a little brook at the Green Court and Durham Road. It's a dotted line. It goes right up into the Liggis Road area. You could step over it most times. We had that rain a few years ago. My neighbor and I walked by it, and we were looking at a pile of rocks pushed up against it. We said, well, we had dumped the rocks there. So the neighbor told us the water coming down actually pushed them all down there. Chlorides, and you heard me, chlorides, I've talked about chlorides a lot. The good news is, since 1983, my chlorides were at 120 about 4 or 5 years ago. They have now dropped to 80. And I attribute that to the fact that Bristol Myers is no longer salting that road that runs right next to the Muddy River. The other thing, reading Wallingford's water report, the chlorides are 118 and 119 in the water. Not everybody's water, but that's one of the tests they did. The maximum's 250, so we're still within the limit. And I mentioned this in a meeting earlier, when the chlorides get to about 100, it starts eroding pipes. I call it a leak. And that's what I had. I had to change to some PEX plumbing because my pipes got very thin. Also in the water report from Wallingford, they're adding a corrosion inhibitor. Is that because of the chlorides in the water? I don't know. So our water's not quite as pure as it was. I'll get to that. I wanted to talk about this more than Jim Heilman. Had a lot of conversations with him since, actually it was before the data center. And he explained a lot to me about reservoirs and the sponge. The sponge he talked about was Bristol Myers back at that time. And the runoff versus no runoff. If you get a lot of runoff, it goes in the reservoir and runs right down the brook. We can't use it. But if you let it hold up in the sponge, it kind of feeds the reservoir slowly over time. You don't have as much of a problem. Basically, I can see history is going to repeat itself with a warehouse, a looming warehouse that can be built there. It's going to be the same thing. I'm sure my chlorides will go now. And I'll just end it with, it seems like we keep on figuring out new ways to cover every square foot of available property that we can. And that's going to be my talk for the Liggis Road thing. We know where that's going. We cut it up and we can build more. It's going to be interesting. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other member of the public wish to talk regarding the POCD?
Ed Owen, 12 Murray Lane. I'm going to keep this more general. Jeff mentioned he wants to boil the ocean. I want to boil a pot of water and bring it to boil. And the way to do that is we got to keep this town growing, not diminishing. The only way to do that is by essentially having affordability or putting new housing in, education, going to maybe a one-school system, and then developing a retirement community. That way we keep them all here. Those people stay here, the tax base increases, restaurants grow, the economy grows. It's quite simple. I want short bullets, like Jeff mentioned. I agree that a lot of people want to do a lot of things, but we're going to do the things that actually make this town grow. And I'm going to start off right now. We approved a lot of warehouses. They haven't been built. Why don't we take back some of the IX and in the water, one of them sitting on Barnes Road, 47 acres. We could put a school there, or we could put a retirement community in there. That we could do that. That'll help our problem here. Granted, transportation, all the other things, I agree with that. But the basics here is our town cannot compete. I had one daughter go here to Sheehan and 2 went to parochial schools. They do not compete here with the adjacent towns. They blow them away. We need to reinvest in the town. That was the last 10-year plan, and it's being kicked into the next 10-year plan. Let's do something about it. And whether we have to be a little more firm with the BOE, you want to send me over there with a little baseball bat, I'd be more than happy to do that. But we need to change our educational system here. And not to compete with you, JP, but we need another retirement community in here. And that way people don't move out of town and don't move out of Connecticut. It's very simple. Because we got a lot of things suggested, but we're drowning in all the suggestions. That's it.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, Jacob, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thanks, and we'll look forward. We'll schedule those meetings and share them publicly. Absolutely. Thank you. We have just a couple items left. Kevin, we have the bond release.
Yes.
Is that ready to be released?
Yes. Yep, I went out there today and all the work was completed.
Kevin, I didn't hear them through.
Yeah, I went out there today and all the, sorry, I don't have any water. All the work was completed, so.
All right. So we have a motion to release that bond.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to release the bond for AA Plus Bonding Services LLC, 524 South Cherry Street, application 402-25.
Motion been made to release, is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Number 8, Kevin, this is you.
If there's nothing major that, I don't want to take up your time because it's pretty late, but yeah, we just had some follow-up meetings from what I had mentioned last month. Water and Sewer Division, I think the biggest thing is agreed to assist with the Aquifer Protection District inspection, so that all will resume in the fall. The cease and correct order at 55 Pendraki has been lifted by IWWC, and developers moving forward to hopefully start construction by early summer. The construction at 1136 Durham Road has started. The environmental planner and I went out to perform initial site inspections and to check erosion and sediment controls. The inspection of that is ongoing, and we're working with them on that, with the engineering department as well, and some road configuration that were part of that plan. And I met with the new JS specialist at Scrog, and they discussed how they can assist us with better data and help with managing our GIS database and making it more available to the public. So we're hoping that in the next couple months we can work with them, and they'll provide resources for us to get more data online for public use. So if you have any questions on those, you can either call me, email me, or if you want to talk about it.
Kevin, I've got a question on the State DOT new train station parking lot finalist for a TOD project. Which train station parking lot? The one on Route 5 or the one on Washington?
The brand new one, so the one on Route 5.
Route 5.
Yes.
And it says, we were selected out of 20 potential sites. Like, we were the only site in Connecticut selected?
I believe 4 sites were selected.
Okay.
So we were a finalist.
So it's going to happen, it's a state project?
Yes, yep. And Don was also in the meeting, so he can.
We're looking at RFP next summer.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Kevin.
Yep.
And then we have the ZBA, who did not have a meeting last month, and they have one item this month for a big garage.
Yes. Yep.
Big garage is still a seller. Any other items?
Nope. Nothing for me.
Can I just make a comment on the administrative approvals? So the way it works, to my understanding, is Kevin has the authority to do the administrative approvals, and he's been exceptionally good in sending out those requests. If any member of the commission, however, wants to get them on the agenda,
Yes.
all we do is say,
Yes.
please place this on the agenda.
Yes, and you could respond to that in the email chain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Somewhere with that?
No?
Oh, that's right. But I want to clarify, the reason it's on the agenda is otherwise it's never been officially recognized.
Correct.
So that's why he lists them on our agenda, so at what
Yes.
meeting did that get?
Yep.
Yeah.
And IT is working on getting all of your emails set up, so it's easier for you to sort through. Hopefully you'll have town emails, so you'll get all the town stuff in one email. So that's what I'm hoping for. Don't hold me to that, because it's not my department.
All right. Call for a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.